Everyone. It's 1:32 and we just met quorum. And we could call attendance, please. Roll call.
Councilmember Espaza.
Here.
Councilmember Carrasco.
Here.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Here.
Chair Arenas.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's see. We have nothing under the review of the work plan. Excuse me. And under consent calendar, approval of the commission work plans, do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Wonderful. All in agreement?
Yes, aye.
Oh.
Aye.
In opposition? Okay, so that moves forward. And now reports to the committee. And the first one we have here is the verbal update on Police Athletic League, which we have all been looking forward to. So if you would come on up. And you're here. Wonderful.
Thank you. My name is John Sterling, Director of Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services. With me, Alex Pearson, the Acting Division Manager for Parks, Recreation, or Parks, I should say. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's been going on since the last time we were here. We've been still doing some community outreach, some surveying, some focus groups. You can see we've got about 275 responses now. Of those, sort of a highlight, 42% of people who use POW were likely to use it again. But about half of them said they really didn't have much of an interaction with police. And obviously, POW stands for Police Activities League. So that's an area where we need to make some inroads. Alex is going to talk about some of the capital work and the maintenance and repair work we'll be doing out there that the audit had identified and some of the progress we've made there.
Yeah, and I'm happy. I'm happy that this is the slide I get to talk about because repairing the facility and improving facility conditions is something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm really happy to give this update that we've been busy and we made quite a few improvements. What you see on the slide here are key achievements by the maintenance staff over the past 12 months. If you were to see a theme to the improvements, and this is just a small representation, we see 4 bullet points on the slide, but we really have 14 major projects or projects that we've completed over the past year. And if you were to look for a theme, you would see that we're looking at health and safety and improving the conditions for the athletes and the customers alike. And that we're also looking at improving the overall impression of the facility because I understand that the athletes, the users at the facility and the community want to be proud of this facility, and we'd like to be proud of it as well. So there were 14 major projects that we achieved during this time period, and the total investment for those 14 projects was about $290,000. And it ranged from things that you've heard about before, like repairing and improving the lighting on the fields, to improving the conditions for the players on the baseball field and the football field, to most recently doing major parking lot repairs and improving the painting of the lines and slurry sealing the parking lot, things like that. Aside from the immediate repairs, looking at the long-term projects, we have several things in the pipeline, as you know about. The turf conversion of the football field to artificial turf is a project that is being strategized, and the project plan for that is being put together by Public Works and the Parks Department right now. The master plan is a project that's underway as we speak. The first strategizing meeting for that between the consultant and the department is in about 2 to 3 weeks. And then we see after that a series of community meetings, and in about a year from now, that report would be ready. Looking ahead, we plan to develop that plan for the conversion of the football field to artificial turf. And one thing to note about all of these projects is that we've been doing it in concert and in connection with the PAL staff. The PAL staff and the operations team that runs the maintenance for that facility meet on a monthly basis in a formal way, but they meet on a daily basis and a weekly basis just to coordinate their activities. And so the items that we've been working on have been prioritized in those meetings and in concert with the PAL staff.
And then one of the areas we're really looking to have discussion around today is the governance model. So we've looked at basically 3 different models. One would be the city just operating PAL on our own. That's probably the most expensive model. One would be finding or creating a new board to work with instead of the PAL organization. That has some restraints when it comes to, naming of organizations since they have that name. How do you work around some of those things, and then creating or recreating, I should say, some of the relationships that they do have with the other leagues. And then the third model would be some combination where you can see that top bullet under PRNS PAL about funding to some degree an executive director over, say, a 3-year period of time, where we decrease that amount over that period of time with the focus on that new executive director as a paid professional doing board development, which is an important aspect, right? So how do you ensure that you have the right people on the board, doing the right things for the organization, so that we have fundraising actually occurring, and so that there's efforts around league expansion. It's definitely an untapped resource, especially once we have the artificial turf in there, which is still, probably 2 to 3 years out. But once we have that in there, it will become a more attractive venue for leagues. And in that model, we would have a police department member, probably a captain, on the board to ensure that we have a city voice there and that there's a police presence as part of the Police Activities League board. We would still provide maintenance like we do. We would still do the contract maintenance. And obviously, Alex just talked about the master plan for the facility that we're going to go through later this year to really see what the community wants. We have heard what the community wanted in some of these community meetings, but now master planning gets us to do a couple nice things. One is it gets the plan down on paper. It can get us through CEQA. That means we can attract grant funding to do perhaps some of the big things we want. There's some big state grants out there. This site does have a historic value to it, right? Because it came from Emma Prush. It obviously is in an underserved neighborhood. So it gets kids outside and active and playing in a safe space. Those are some very attractive qualities for grant writing. So once we get down that road a little bit further, we may be able to attract more money. And now going forward, we really want to talk today with you about your thoughts around those governance models that we just talked about. And then we'll then figure out what are the roles of the Parks Department, what is the role of PAL or whoever that other partner is, what's the role of the Police Department, and then we would negotiate contracts around those roles to make sure that we put those in writing so everybody sort of knew what their responsibility is. So with that, we're happy to take questions and have discussion.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to look to my colleagues for questions. Councilmember Esparza.
Do we have public comment?
Not on this item, no. And I have to ask, Commissioner Idrios, you didn't indicate the agenda item. What agenda item is it? General. Oh, for general comment. Okay, at the end.
Open
Okay.
forum.
Wonderful. No, there isn't.
Okay. I just see a member of the PAL board here, so I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak if you wanted to speak. If not, that's fine.
No pressure.
I wanted to sort of add my 2 cents, which is, being the PAL liaison at the city council has been a really interesting experience, sort of to see how that has changed since what it was when I was a kid, right? And my belief is today is that board has been really doing its best and trying really hard, but there's some clarity needed between the relationship between PAL and the city in order to negotiate contracts. And that issue has been hampering the current board from going out and pursuing income that is needed. So I think that's something that is a good thing, and definitely needs to be done. And that clarity will also help in recruiting more board members, which they have been trying to do at a time that they've been sort of trying to deal with a lot of other things as well. And I'm really happy to see the city investing the $3 million in turf conversion for the football field, in addition to all the other investment in the current, in our current budget year in funding positions for PAL. I think it's long overdue city investment into PAL, and that's the kind of, I think, good faith that the overall community needs to see, sort of the city saying, yes, we are putting our stake in the turf, right? That we are not, we're gonna stand by PAL. PAL needs to grow. Our kids need more of these services, not others, and not less. And so I'm very happy to see that. And I am hopeful that in this time where we're adding clarity, where we're gonna conduct negotiations and really essentially do some business planning, right? Because what you just described are the key elements around a business plan, is that we can also look at innovations that the current PAL board has been doing about what other PALs are doing in the country, which is league sports, which is, you know, I didn't play in league sports. I have lots of family that did, and that's sort of the nature of that is changing. And so while that sort of still exists, a lot of kids are looking at shorter camps or like one-offs, right? Or one-on-one basketball or stuff like that, that it's changing. It's not all league sports. And so I just wanted to mention that again. And I wanted to thank the PAL board members who are here today for coming here, and thank them for their hard work as we look forward to the future of PAL, really. Thank you.
And it looks like maybe there is a comment from the public. If you would just come forward and then fill out the yellow card afterwards, sir. Come forward to the microphone.
Thank you. Council members, Joe Gallardi from PAL, the Executive Director at PAL. Yes, I've just about been 1 year on this job, and believe me, it's been kind of surprising, but Councilwoman Spars has kind of really hit it on the head. You know, the city, I'm kind of used to the person who kind of moves in a direction and get things done, okay? But the contract, really, I can't say enough, is probably one of the big hindrances, because the number of people and some major companies that our president and myself have contacted that are already doing things at PAL to improve the situation. But the contract really kind of hinders the progress in that nature for, you know, PAL to get more income come in to offset you know, the whole situation. But I've enjoyed working with the city departments that I've had, you know, a very good experience. But, you know, my job is, you know, it is a business. You got to run it like a business, and that's what it's really all about. Cities, and I thoroughly understand the cities move a little bit slower, and I've been used to that because I've been president of a professional league, California League, for many years, and part of my job was working with the cities, okay? So I understand that mentality. But you are 100% correct. The contract is the biggest thing that we can shore all these things basically up to go in the direction that I feel this council wants to basically go. So I just wanted to explain to you that I do understand. I'm a cooperative individual, but, you know, my job is to try to get us there, okay? So that's the few comments I just want to make so that you understood a little bit better. You know, we're not the enemy. We're here, as I told my own staff over there, our job is to cooperate with the city so we get this job done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there's anybody else who would like to speak, on this item, you can fill out a card later and submit, but it's open for comment. Okay, I'm going to continue with my council members. Is there any other, Councilmember Carrasco?
Thank you. Am I on?
You're always on.
You're on. Well, thank you so much for the update. I too want to thank the board members that are here. I know that they don't get paid to do the work that they've been doing, so whenever you're working with a board for any organization, their volunteer time is much appreciated. A couple of things I just wanted to ask you. The repairs that have been done or in the pipeline, that wasn't based on the master plan. Was that just an assessment that Parks and Rec went
Yeah.
out and did?
Right, so coming out of the audit, even in the audit, there was some recognition of some maintenance needs and repairs, so we did some budget adds. And so we've been working on a lot of those, but also other things that we've been noticing that we have some money to repair. So the master plan will be an entirely different process, where we're gonna look at the whole site and decide, is this the right mix of fields and sports? Do we need to change it up? What about the buildings? You know, how do we use those and concessions? Things like bathrooms, you know, bleachers, those kind of, all that will be part of that process.
So is the master plan solely and specifically going to be focused on the facility at PAL? All the,
Yeah.
what it encompasses?
Basically, everything north from 280,
Okay.
not Emma Prush Farm, just the PAL facility.
Just the PAL facility. And this may be just on a side note, I know that I've spoken to Angel, I've spoken to you about this since day one when I got into office, and we may have had that conversation also as well, about creating or developing an asset mapping, which PAL is really, you know, one of the centerpieces of the east side of San Jose. But every chance I get, I'm gonna throw a pitch and see who catches it. You can tell I'm not very athletic. So PAL, and the reason why PAL and this report has been so important to us, because I don't see it as just a park that serves the east side of San Jose or District 5, my residents, but it belongs to the city of San Jose. It just happens to be located geographically in my district. But it is on the border of District 7, District 8, District 5, and of course, it attracts youth from all throughout the city for its different sports components. The facility itself is located in a really important area of East San Jose, out of Emma Prush Park. We know the long history there, and it's a regional park. We love it. It's one of the only working farms. And we have Vegelution, of course, there, and we'll be investing in order to make some improvements there. But in addition to that, it's right on a very important corridor for us, King and Story. Who hasn't heard about King and Story? And then the other historical corridor is Alum Rock, which is less than a mile from where PAL is. And of course, Alum Rock is facing a lot of challenges in terms of gentrification and displacement, but nonetheless, it's changing. We're trying to see how we conserve some of the character of the neighborhood, as well as preserve the businesses that have been there for generations. But I also want to draw your attention that between King and Story and Alum Rock is our beautiful Our Lady of Guadalupe with a national historic recognition of the McDonald Hall. And the reason why that's so important is because this is where a social movement was birthed. Cesar Chavez and John F. Kennedy met there, but Cesar Chavez was trained in terms of what his social justice movement would end up becoming and why it was. And then, of course, we have our gem of all gems on the east side, which is the Mexican Heritage Plaza. What I always say, it sits on hallowed ground, which is on the site of the first great boycott, the Safeway that was there and then was torn down. And now you have this beautiful center that works to not only preserve Mexican art and culture, but really culture of all diversities because everyone comes and uses the facilities there. Let's not forget about Little Portugal. Cesar Chavez's house, just down the street. We have one of the most iconic skateboard parks there that I wasn't even aware of until my son told me, that it was right in the heart of East San Jose, where some of our professional skaters have come out of. So we have a lot to be proud of, and we have a lot to preserve. And that's the emphasis that I want to make sure that I underline, emphasize, and underscore, is that we have a rich history that deserves preserving and also elevating to a higher platform. But PAL has been sitting there as facilities that has been long forgotten, and to those that drive by, to some extent, some blight. And so I'm glad that we're working on this. But this is why PAL is so important. I haven't even gotten into the programming and the opportunities offered to our youth, which look at PAL as probably the most feasible of opportunities for some of our youth that are coming from really hardship situations. And we should be doing everything and anything to tear down whatever gate, fence, barrier, border, wall stands between our kids and the opportunities that can be offered to them. And so I'm glad, I just want to emphasize how happy I am that we're moving forward, that we're upgrading a facility that we should have done already a while ago, but we're doing it now. And that hopefully we will reimagine it as it should be, not just a facility that offers opportunities, but as a facility that sits right in the middle of a very historic district, and especially a very historic 2, 3, 4 blocks of history, not that belongs to East San Jose. I want to emphasize, it's a history that belongs to the city of San Jose. And I want to be able, for all of us, to understand that, and those who come to visit have a recognition of it as we're coming in to the park and using it. And so, so I do want to talk about, besides the master plan, I want to put I want to put that bug in everybody's ear as to what we're going to do about asset mapping for such an important area that happens to sit in my district, but represents every diverse community in every east side of every major city. Because that's the way I see East San Jose. It's like East LA, East Austin, as I was just told yesterday. It just represents, it's a more global representation. And I want us to pay homage and respect to that. So in terms of the master planning, I know it's just going to be strictly for facilities. When do we see that being completed? I think you may have put it in here, but I'm not sure. Because that's when the real work is going to start, correct?
Yes, the timeline I'm given is about 1 year from now, so probably the fall of '21, it would be completed and ready.
So a year from now, you mean fall of
Fall
2020?
You're right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Fall of 2020, when we'll see the master plan completed.
That's the timeline that it should be on, yeah.
Okay.
And if I can interject, we can have those conversations through that process around connecting it to the history in the area as part of the master plan process. Is you do some theming and things like that, you know.
Which I think would be wonderful. It's not just a stadium that just sits isolated in an island by itself. It's really, I think, part of a bigger integrated picture that we need to make sure we somehow start to really, oh, and I forgot First Tee. Another piece of land that was donated to the city of San Jose for the purposes of having access.
Yeah, Rancho, yeah.
Rancho, right, I said First Tee, Rancho del Pueblo. And so, again, I think there's also a great opportunity to integrate what's happening at Emma Prush Park, PAL, what's happening at at Rancho, I mean, you've got a sports complex there. Might be a little divided by a couple little streets, right? But it's still the potential of a sports complex or a larger regional park. But then let's not forget that, what is it, maybe an eighth of a mile, Angel, sits Moxa, which we're all determined we're going to get back into our hands somehow or the other. But Moxa is very prominent, and if we don't really look at that seriously, it continues to draw an element into that neighborhood that is not the kind of element that we want our residents to be exposed to. And so Moxa needs to be considered as part of this picture. And last but not least, you have, of course, the Cesar Chavez School, a school named after Cesar Chavez. So lots of history that we can't neglect to really start talking about how we're going to incorporate and interweave. One cannot stand alone or isolate it from the other. It has to be an integrated plan. So that, I'll leave that at that. But I do see that as a much, as a much bigger picture than just the PAL Stadium. And I hope that as we move forward with this master plan, that somehow in that master plan, we're taking into account all of this where it sits. Last but not least, I've also contributed from my budget and my budget document, the mayor as well, quite a bit of funding that is going to go to paint murals in the overpasses of King and Story, or King and 680, I guess it would be, and then Capitol and Capitol, which is just down the street as well, and then Jackson and 680. So those three are slated to have big, beautiful murals that are going to be representative of the community with a lot of input from youth and our community there. So I'll leave it at that for now. But again, I will continuously remind everybody that PAL is just a part of a bigger picture, and we need to make sure that all those dots really do line up. Okay.
Thank you, and Councilmember Foley.
Thank you. Is it appropriate for me to bring forward some of the PAL board members? I have a couple questions for them. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Who would like to answer a question that I have? It seems that we have the facilities master plan that we're working on, and that's great, but if we don't have the operations nailed down, then PAL won't succeed. So I've heard a couple of times today that there's problems with the contract. Can you tell me what's the number one thing that you would suggest be changed in the contract that is hampering your ability to move forward in utilizing the space?
Well, the contract, one was done back a couple of years ago, and things have changed, just how we would actually run business nowadays anyway. And it's not necessarily the rev split, because that pretty much makes sense. It's more of what we are allowed to do in fundraising aspects. Like, for instance, we wanted to actually, like a normal baseball field would have different advertisements around the baseball field and things of that nature, and be able to raise money that way as one avenue. It's just a lot more things that we can do. Like right now, we've done fundraising. First of all, I'll tell you who I am, Jamal Newborn, PAL president.
Thank you.
President, sorry about that. And I've been dealing with this audit. That was the first thing I had as soon as I got into the position. So I've been trying to run around and get everything done, and we got majority of it done, as you can see, and that's why we're here. The biggest thing, we've gotten some fundraising from, like, right now, as of a couple of months ago, sports, Dick's Sporting Goods, Wells Fargo, they're committed to help us out every year, and we're doing more. We had a lot more CEOs and things on the board before, but when we started transitioning into this phase of the audits and everything, we've lost that. We've lost our board advisory because of that as well. So we're now in a situation where we're trying to build that back up. And with this master plan, a couple of things that I think definitely coming out, fixing the fields and things of that nature will help tremendously, because again, when we make our one pager and we're going out there and championing this place, we definitely have to stand behind it, and we've been doing the best thing we can. And of course, when people come out and look at it, it just needs to look the part. And over the years since I've been on the board, before I became the PAL president, we've constantly requested over the years. You can look back at the logs of different things that need to be done, coming down from the football stadium, bleachers, safety issues, all the way up. So it is not just a field. We will also try to establish different relationships with the different leagues, just so we can have something concrete. Also, that fundraising money that they actually go out and do, so it's not just the power board, it's actually the organization of leagues, and a percentage of that comes back to the organization. That's something we're implementing now. And then from there, that way we have them championing around the city too, into the different areas, like you said, North San Jose, West San Jose, because they're football leagues and stuff like that, and there's teams that are coming from those areas as well. And I think that's the bulk of it. The contract just needs to be ironed out where we can have clear identifying places where we can generate and come up with creative ideas to fundraise and bring more revenue in. That's the primary concern of the contract.
Yeah, and just to answer that furthermore, that's why when I said about the contract, okay, because the present contract that was done in 2007 from the original contract, the language is all completely different. The city did take over, the property, okay? Thoroughly understand that. But there's a number of items in the contract when it concerns us going out to raise money, and have people and companies in, just like, I've been dealing with Amazon, Shoe Palace, and a number of other organizations that want to participate. But the contract, how it reads, dealing with those people, has to be revamped and to be conducive so that we can fund the deal really well. And because there's a lot of things I've gotten done already that are really a benefit to the city, okay, financially. But it needs to be spelled out really in a contract. And that's really where the, when Jamal says the hang up there, that really is, because I don't like warranting to somebody and then you can't perform and do it and tell them no, okay? And that's why I said it's a two-edged sword, but it can be worked out.
And I
Okay.
just want to point out one, just when we were talking about this, it just came to mind, a distinct example. The lights in our field were sabotaged. They took the copper out, and the lights didn't work, and it was like, hey, send this to the city and get it resolved. However, they would get no feedback back from that. Lights are out, we got leagues out there renting the fields, kids out there playing in the dark, things of that nature, nothing was happening. We reached out to Cupertino Electric, which is why we have their banner on our baseball field. They came out the next day, inspected it. That next week, they put the copper back in there, welded it shut, and everything. But that was in violation of the contract. Because, and in return, we gave them a banner on our baseball field that was, we had a term limit actually with them for like a year or something like that. But, it's those things that don't allow us to be able to do the things and have the reach that we have. And we reached out to the news and actually got more people coming in wanting to give us money, things of that nature. Again, it violates the contract. So and the scoreboards, we just did. So we reached out to, we had
We got
Adidas.
all new scoreboards
Yeah.
basically out there, which we're just waiting for the
Public
public
Works
works
to put 'em up.
department to put them up. And, again, we got that done, with it, which is a big savings of over $100,000 to, the city of San Jose. So, we're really working together, but the thing is, it's the contract, how it reads. That's why I know, Justin, we've been talking that we've gotta attack the contract to put it in its perspective, so there is a complete understanding on both sides on what to do.
Thank you, I appreciated it. Not an easy answer then is what I'm hearing, but some of it is fundraising component and bureaucracy that you're running into. I know you probably have people on your board who could, like Cupertino Electric, they're not on your board, but they could go and do the work, but that doesn't fulfill the health and the safety codes by the city necessarily. So the city's name is on it, they have to make sure that the work is done correctly, even though I know Cupertino Electric is very responsible, legitimate, big organization, and they're doing it. to code, but the city needs to oversee that and be involved. I completely understand that.
Excuse me, let me interrupt you. I think Angel wants to add to that
Thank
answer
you.
that you were
Thank you.
looking for.
Yeah, Councilor, I appreciate the feedback and what's being said, but I do think it's also important to add some balance to what is being said here. Yeah, I think if we're gonna be perfectly candid, I don't think it's just a contract. I think that's one part of it, and you've clearly heard there's mutual agreement that it needs to be modified and brought to date. But I think there was also a lack of accountability, and it was also things that the board did not do and they should have done. For example, all the examples that they just gave are great examples and are examples that we could literally move on, but it requires two-way communication. It means if you're having a conversation with Amazon or with Shoe Palace, then it requires a conversation as per the contract to say, okay, what process do we need to follow in order to make sure? I will guarantee you, the Parks and Rec Department, who last year generated more than $23 million in revenue, who has a very entrepreneurial kind of perspective on how to run things, would have definitely worked with the board to make this happen. But the department are also not mind readers, right? And so I do think it's important to add that balance. Now, moving forward, I think John and Alex and the team and the board members, as you've heard, I think we've turned a corner, and I think we're at a much better place. And so I think what lies ahead of us is a lot more productive. But I can't also just sit here and say nothing about the fact that it is a two-way street, and there's things that the board did not do that they should have done, and it's all spelled out in the audit.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, and please don't think that my questions were targeted in any way at the city or staff department. I'm just trying actually to get their
No, it's a great
perspective, but it reminds me of a couple of situations on the school board at a couple of high schools I represented. The parent club wanted to put in a sound booth so they could have announcers, and they have the contractors all licensed and everything, and they didn't want to wait for the school district to come in and fix it, right? School district had it all scheduled and everything, and yes, it was gonna be more money for them. But the parents went in, they changed it, and guess what? The school district came in and had to tear it down because they couldn't certify that it was built to code. So I completely understand where you're coming from and accept all of that. So really, what I'm hearing, it's communication on both sides. It's creating not just a master plan for facilities, but a business plan for the operations of PAL and how we go forward with the governing board. And John, to your point, which you mentioned earlier, is what kind of board, what do we want it to look like? You asked for input on that. So I don't think I have an answer for that yet, other than maybe a larger board made up of people from the city. Well, I don't even know the ins and outs of the board. My colleague probably has a better feeling for that, so.
Well, and we certainly want people that can help drive revenue, whether that's through fundraising or, Jamal, the president, mentioned, CEOs that might want to be on the board.
Yeah.
People with deep pockets. And throughout my career, I've worked with a lot of nonprofits and familiar with, especially at smaller ones, there's a mantra that we've talked about called give, get, or get off. So you're either producing something, say maybe you're an attorney so you can help with the legal work, you're an accountant, you're giving. Otherwise, you should be raising money or writing your own checks because you have a deep pocket, or getting your friends to write checks, or this isn't the board, right? That's not what we're expecting from a board member. So that's the kind of board we want to have.
Got it.
That's going to be active in the community, that can connect to great big sponsorships. We're all on board with doing sponsorships. In the audit, it points out, up to that point in the audit, those things probably weren't done the way we should have done them. There was actually a stadium name, Shoe Palace Stadium. We have a naming process if we're going to name a city facility. That wasn't done, those kind of things. So that's where we get hung up on in the contract, making sure not only we clarifying roles about what can be done, but loosening up some so that they're able to spread out a little further than they have in the past, but they know where the boundaries are, and then, play the game within the boundaries.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I respond to what he was saying earlier, if I may?
I apologize, but I think we're going to have to move on. We still have another council member with the questions, and we have 5 more items on the agenda. Thank you, but Please stay close in case our council member has any questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Go
I
ahead and take a seat.
appreciate the conversation. I think it's important to make sure that, you know, Powell Stadium and the programs it offers is successful into the future, so I'm glad we're talking about the future. You know, I was recently appointed to the San Jose Sports Authority. I actually wasn't even familiar with the organization prior to being appointed. And so San Jose Sports Authority, for those that you don't know, it's a San Jose Sports Authority, it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to increase the city of San Jose's economic development, visibility, and civic pride through sports. It's essentially the city's sports authority. And so what I'm curious about, what have we done to maybe outreach to some of the already well-connected sort of folks that are on the Sports Authority board that can maybe help with some of the things as we're developing maybe a new board? And what I've heard is sort of, and what I've gathered from the reports I've read in the past, sort of, I'm not even sure if this is proper use of the word, but professionalizing the board a little bit, right? Making sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing and playing the roles that they're supposed to be playing. And so have we thought about reaching out to them?
Certainly, those are the type of people that we would be interested in being on the board. We don't, as a city, appoint board members, right? The board appoints their own. But we wanted to get to the governance first and understand, because one of the options was there is no PAL that we're working with and the city would run it. So getting to the how, what are we going to be investing in? What model are we going to be investing in was sort of that first step.
Yeah, and I guess it isn't reaching out to them to see if, you know, we can get some of them to sit on the board or anything like that. I mean, although that wouldn't hurt. You got folks from the Earthquakes, from the 49ers, from Sharks. You get a host of different people, ex-professional athletes, all that. People that are well-connected, right? So it's more reaching out to them to figure out, hey, this is what we're doing. This is where we want to go. Do you have any ideas? They put on these events professionally, you know, often, as you all know, and bring a lot of attention to it. And so I think a conversation may be warranted to figure out what their thoughts are. Not that you have to take them and implement them, but it's just to flesh out more details and have additional conversations.
Yeah, I think it's a good
Make
idea.
sure a good product sort of is popped out of the oven.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I thought it was worthwhile.
Councilmember Esparza.
Yeah, I'll keep it short, I promise. I actually just really, I think the main issue, there have been a number of issues, but I think clarity is the number one thing we need and that we're getting right now. And I agree, I think we're turning the corner, we're getting the clarity and the investment needed for PAL so that they can move, we can all move forward, the city can move forward, PAL can move forward, and the community can start having a vibrant PAL that is needed. And so I think that I just don't want any misunderstandings to be out there about, there's been a tremendous amount of work being put in on this, and I do think it's positive moving forward. And again, the clarity is the single most important thing. And I did want to respond to the board. You know, their give-get policies are, you know, the sort of our standard, but the give isn't just money, or it's community. And PAL is the kind of organization that over the years has benefited from having a strong community presence on the board, so that to have that relationship with the community. And I know you didn't mean that, but I just, again, wanted to say that out publicly so that people understand that we value that, and PAL particularly needs to have that sort of community presence on the board, as well as folks that can do the type of fundraising that we need to have a vibrant PAL. And again, that clarity is needed so that we can do that moving forward. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Lastly, I do have one question about the governance model, and that is, what are the guiding principles that you will use to make the decision on the final model that you'll use? Like, how will you come to that decision?
Well, we were looking for some feedback from you today, and it seems like there's general consensus that, okay, this sounds like something that could work. So then we'll sit down with them, look at the details. So one of the things, for example, the audit asked us to do was really look at the sponsorship policy, not only just as it relates to PAL, but really what they found was that in PRNS, we didn't have a nice tight one either. So we've worked on that. While this has been going on, we've been doing that and finalizing that. So that we have a guiding document that's just, it's not just PAL, it's any of our facilities, how we could do sponsorships and things like that. And we've done some. But But certainly, we would look for things like usage rates and attendance. You know, it's underutilized now. So, for example, if it wasn't being fully utilized, we would have, as the city, the ability, as the Parks and Recreation Department, to program. Looking at things, Maya, like you had mentioned, outside of just sports, there can be events there, right? There can be other things that go on there. It doesn't just have to be playing a ball game. There are other uses for that facility potentially, and that, so when it's not league play and it's not being used for that, or one of the things we heard from the community is, when there is downtime, what's our access to the field systems? Can we just show up and hang out and play games or do whatever? I mean, people do walk the track and stuff, but there is some disconnection to the very adjacent community about what can we, can't we do. They have done a good job. For example, they put in some futsal, and that brings some folks in largely probably from the neighborhood. But certainly we heard from the initial community meetings, and I think we'll hear it in the master planning process. How do we make this more integrated with the neighborhood around it so that they feel good and safe about being there? They do feel it is a safe place, by the way. One of the probably most common themes we heard is, we really like it being there because it's a safe place in the community for our kids to be. So we hear that, and so it would be looking at things like that as guiding principles about how we use this facility going forward.
And so that kind of feedback, you're gonna get through the master planning process?
Well, some we will. I mean, we've already gotten, so
Right, you
we
have
did a lot of community
275,
process, yeah. Almost 300 surveys that people have answered for us. So we've heard these things, so we just, I guess what I was saying is, I think we're gonna hear it again in the master planning process, because it's gonna be a lot of the same people probably that'll show up for that. So I think we've already heard from the community these things, so that becomes part of the framework, if you will, that we would be designing around how this facility is used going forward.
So I hear that under the capacity or the use of the facility, but, and I can understand the wanting to hear what the community wants in order to determine the use of that facility, but I'm still struggling to understand how the governance model will be chosen based on that feedback. I'm wondering, what are those principles that are gonna guide you? The feedback from the community is gonna tell you what kind of use the facility will meet or suit their needs,
Right.
but I still think that the question still stands about the governance model, and I don't know if the community will give you that answer.
Yeah, we didn't ask the community about governance model. It's a bit more of a complex subject, and it's largely about the relationship between the city and the provider, or the city and just operating it. And that's why we had those three that we really looked at, and we talked with the board about it and walked through it. You know, from our perspective, we were leaning towards we do some investment in the executive director so that they can do the investment in the board, the development of the board, the fundraising strategies, the league development. And we do that over a period of 3 years, and then it's a declining investment each year as they build their capacity to fundraise and bring in revenue and sponsorships, et cetera, and can pay for it themselves. So the idea is it's a seed money kind of model, where then we also have a member from the city, captain from the police department, on the board to represent the city's interests, and those would be detailed in the contract. So those would be things that we would be staffing that as well as PRNS. So what we were leaning towards was that model, and that's what I was asking for feedback today.
And is that the interim model right now? Is that what?
It's not,
That
no.
there is no model?
We have not changed anything.
It's just status quo?
Status quo.
Okay. I mean, I think it would be important for us to have an absolute role for PAL. I know that there's, one of those options was for PAL not to be part of that. And I think they're part and parcel of all of this, and I think you've seen it in your feedback from those surveys. People want to have this connection with the police officers, and unfortunately, they might have not had that. And so I think for a lot of the youth, as Councilmember Carrasco was stating earlier, this might be one of the very few avenues to provide them with some alternatives. And so I'm not sure that you got that any of that feedback from us. I think if you really wrote out this model for us and gave us those three options in terms of maybe the benefits and maybe the drawbacks from each of those models, maybe we could provide you with more feedback, because I don't think I heard that piece today. And I think that's really important, and I want to make sure that we all get it right, and that we're helpful, right? So if you could bring it back as your next, in your next update, and so that we can actually give that feedback, because I don't think you, aside from what I'm commenting, I don't think you heard any other comments on governance model.
Well, I thought I did. I thought I heard Maya
I don't think.
and Magdalena, and yeah, and even Sergio saying, okay, well, this makes some sense going forward. But if I got that wrong, let me know while I'm here.
Chair, I would like to make that motion moving forward. I think it would help us, again, to add that bit of clarity, to have that governance model come back to us one more time moving forward so that we can get that clarity.
So you want us to come with a governance model or give you some to choose from? And give it, or some to talk to us about?
Well, I think what you mentioned
variety.
was having the choices, right?
Right.
The options, yeah.
Options.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there a second?
Second. Thank you.
Can I add something about, so we're voting on having them come back to us with ideas on
The
what that
governance
governance model. As you're considering that, I'd like to see what it might look like to have an interim board, and then to kind of manage the transition to the new board and the new structure, what that might look like, if that's a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think how to manage the transition is something that we should discuss further as as the options come back.
Okay, so while I'm gonna try to synthesize all this, and then that way we could make sure that, again, in the spirit.
Because we've confused you.
In the spirit of clarity, kind of try to,
Makes
so
sense.
there's been already a lot of real good work that PRNS in coordination with the board and other stakeholders, San Jose PD, among others, are doing. So maybe what we need to do is just kind of capture that and
Yeah.
kind of summarize that, because in some ways, it's not really status quo. There have been shifts that have been made, including, as you heard, over 14, improvements and things like that. I know there's been efforts to also expand usage and all that. So we'll capture that, we'll synthesize that, and then over the course of this part of the community engagement process, and as we continue to have more discussions with our stakeholders, we'll come back with maybe 1 to 3 options, give or take, and then with a recommendation in terms of, and then we'll run it through NSC, cross-reference it to council, and that'll also be consistent with the audit follow-up. So I think if we do that, the one thing though is I think maybe we should just create a little space to figure out the timing on that, and so I can work with staff to figure out a realistic timeline to make sure we get this right, and then we'll make sure we agendize it on the work plan, if that works for you all.
That works with me.
Yeah.
I want to add I think what I heard you say, Councilmember Foley, is also in each of the whatever models we bring back, what's the transition plan if we were to do
Yes.
that?
Correct.
Yes,
Each model, right?
right, because we want success. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? It moves forward. Okay, thank you so much for the report, and thank you for all the really good work. The 14 projects that you've completed is not lost on us. We heard that loud and clear, and thank you so much for doing all that you're doing to make sure that PAL Stadium comes back on board. Thank you. All right, so we are moving on to D2. Digital literacy update, so library staff is here, I believe. And we're ready to hear this report.
All right, good afternoon, council members. My name is Samantha Kramer. I'm the Education and Programming Services Manager at the San Jose Public Library. I'll be joined today by Hap Yielding from our IT team at the library, and my colleagues from Parks and Rec, Neil Rufino. And we are going to speak to you around our collective work in the area of digital literacy, one of the main focus areas for San Jose's education and digital literacy strategy. So the library and Parks and Rec, as you have heard in previous updates, are employing an iterative approach that utilizes small-scale pilots and gradual expansion to ensure that programs are fully meeting the needs of the community and that city staff are able to develop and deliver quality programming at scale. This update focuses on 4 areas of implementation: the Coding 5K Challenge, the Wonder Workshop pilot, device lending pilots at both the library and at Parks and Rec, and data regarding public computer and Wi-Fi usage, again, both at the library and PRNS. It will also include a brief update on the digital literacy quality standards creation process, a draft of which we plan to bring to this committee in spring 2020. So we'll kick off with our Coding 5K Challenge. Reflecting the city's commitment to increasing the availability of quality STEM and computer science programming to Silicon Valley students, the Coding 5K Challenge was launched in February 2018 in partnership with the library, the mayor's office, and the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. The program was designed to increase access to coding-focused programs and deepen the quality of programming through both the use of assessment tools and expert volunteers that work in the industry. The goal of the Coding 5K Challenge is to increase our capacity to serve 5,000 unduplicated students annually by the year 2020. Thus far, courses in Python, Java, C++, and Scratch have been implemented, including classes that utilize both robotics and coding. In summer 2018, the library implemented its first series of full-day coding camps at SJPL locations through a generous sponsorship from Alaska Airlines. The camps were conducted Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for students ages 9 to 11. They received instruction from certified K-12 teachers on coding, art, cultural competency, literacy, and of course some physical activities. This past summer in 2019, the camps expanded to 7 locations across the city. They were led again by those certified K-12 teachers and included a rigorous coding curricula and STEM challenge activities, culminating in a student showcase where campers were able to demonstrate their projects to family, friends, and community members. Also, in this past fiscal year in 18-19, the library partnered with the Moreland School District to provide Coding 5K training to Moreland School District volunteers. The volunteers were trained to teach the Coding 5K curriculum to K-8 students through the district-run after-school program at all 8 schools throughout the district. The library provided support in choosing the curriculum, as well as training the district employees and their volunteers. Through this partnership, an additional 291 students participated in the Coding 5K Challenge, and the library is currently working with Moreland to finalize a continuation of this partnership for the next academic year. You can see some of the fiscal year highlights on the slide, including our overall attendance of more than 6,000 learners, which both meets and exceeds our 5,000 goal 1 year early. So looking forward with our Coding 5K Challenge, where are we going? The library's expansion plans for the Coding 5K Challenge for the new fiscal year include continuing to host multi-week coding and robotics courses led by expert volunteers at all 25 of our library locations, expanding the menu of available curricula and workshops to include a wider range of coding languages and targeted age demographics, especially for middle and high school students. We're hoping to create a Coding 5K toolkit to assist other cities or library systems hoping to replicate the Coding 5K Challenge in their own communities. We are in the process of installing 3D printers at all of the San Jose Public Library branch locations, which will enable students and members of the public access to this highly in-demand maker technology. And we hope to expand our partnership with the Moreland School District and explore similar partnerships with other districts as they approach us. And then, of course, expanding also the Coding 5K Challenge to some PRNS locations, beginning with the Wonder Workshop pilot program, which we will talk about now. So with the generous support of the District 5 Council Office, thank you so much, The library and PRNS will expand access to robotics programs to students through a Wonder Workshop Robotics pilot program, a series of age-appropriate and standard-aligned programs that will provide for a hands-on play and creative problem-solving coding experience. The pilot program will be hosted in District 5 at 3 library locations, which will be Alum Rock, Hillview, and the new Mount Pleasant neighborhood library, and at 3 proposed PRNS locations, the Mayfair Community Center, ACE Empower, and ACE Esperanza. The Wonder Workshop offers a K-5 Learn to Code and a grade 6 through 8 Applied Robotics curricula, which covers coding and robotics fundamentals before moving on to more advanced coding and robotics skills. The comprehensive curricula helps students practice computational thinking with their Dash, Dot, and Q robots. And to introduce our new friend, the Dash robot, one of my wonderful programming librarians, Tiffany Garcia, is going to come up and do a quick demo for you all so you can see what it looks like and what it can do.
So this is Dash. Say hello, Dash.
Hi, Dash. What? Is he looking at us? Oh my gosh, I'm so looking.
He can see who's around. Yeah, wants to know who his audience is.
So we've pre-programmed the Dash here to do a series of activities. It uses a block-based language that's very similar to Scratch. And so Tiffany's going to go ahead and demonstrate what it will do, and we'll take a look at him.
And Tiffany, when you get a chance, or when you speak, can you speak into the microphone so we can hear you as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, it is working. Okay, before I thought it wasn't. So again, my name is Tiffany Garcia, and this is Dash, and I am currently using the Block app. So Blocky app is more of a code-friendly app, and it enables you to introduce coding, like Samantha said. Later on, I will show a quick introduction of Wonder, another app that can be useful too for early education. So Blocky. So first, I had to make sure that he's connected to my tablet. And so now what I'm going to do is go to the Start button and select the beginning of the coding. Now, afterwards, I'm going to go to the special controls, which will enable me to do a loop, meaning it will repeat whatever coding I'm going to list afterwards. And from there, I'm going to allow it to repeat twice the coding I'm going to do. And first, what I'm going to do is select drive. I want it to drive forward. And what I do is drag it together, all these blocks. And then afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and select light on the left ear. So its left ear is going to be green. And then afterwards, I'm going to make it race towards you. And then, don't worry, not that far. These do not go so far. We can adjust them how far they go. They go by centimeters. So for the forward one, I selected 90 centimeters to go towards you. And then afterwards, let's see here. It's going to say ta-da. I select the sound selections. And then afterwards, I'm going to make it turn, and then turn again, and then walk towards me. I'm going to show the demonstration for you, but feel free to stop by Education and Programming Services if you'd like a personal introduction of it. Okay.
The app is nice and friendly, especially for beginner coders, which is one of the reasons why we love the Dash so much.
Does he vacuum?
I really wish that he did vacuum.
Maybe soon.
So kiddos are able to get to this point where they're manipulating. Oh, nice.
Yes,
Right.
uh-huh.
The blocks make it really easy. You just do a drag and drop through the app. And so it's a really nice introduction, a way just to get kids thinking, using that computational thinking that we talk about with coding so much. and really walking them through that process in a way that's simple and easy to understand so that they can get results really quickly and feel encouraged.
I think you need to use the same process with us.
I would be happy to come and do a coding class for the council if they would like.
I would attend.
It has to be this level, though.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
there's a whole bunch of tricks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dash, and thank you, Tiffany. The Wonder Workshop pilot will be integrated into the existing Coding 5K structure being implemented currently at the library, which includes working with the branch staff and with our volunteers to recruit students from the community and lead the programs, as well as collect necessary data from surveys and quality assessments. So we are going to be starting in a little bit later in the fall with the library locations. We'll offer a rotation of programming for pre-readers using the DOT robot, which we did not see today, but is an equally cute robot for students that are not quite reading just yet. School-age students in the elementary school range, which we use the Dash that we saw here. And then for middle school students, we'll use the Q robot, which is, again, similar to the Dash, but a little bit different and allows for some more advanced techniques. Both the library and PRNS staff will participate in a 12-hour online training course that's offered through the Wonder Workshops website to learn more about the curricula and how to troubleshoot the technology as needed. And then we'll use a train-the-trainer model to then recreate that training for our staff and for volunteers that will be working for us. And I will now transition over to Neil, who will speak a little bit more about the PRNS side of the Wonder Workshops.
So as we mentioned before, we're going to be offering the services both at the Mayfair Community Center as well as ACE Empower and Esperanza programs. Our program is going to start a little bit later. We're targeting fiscal year or 2020 in January to start the programs. Part of it is we'll hear about a little bit later. We are getting our iPads purchased for the Tech for Good program, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, which we will need to, as you can see, run the robots at our community centers and at the schools. So we're excited to be in partnership with the library and get our staff up and trained to kind of continue to offer these programs out there.
And I will now kick it over to Hap, who will talk to us a little bit more about our public computers and Wi-Fi.
Thanks. So I'm Hap Fielding. I'm the IT manager for San Jose Public Library. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to draw a little bit of attention to the investment that SJPL has made in technology to make these programs possible. First are the reservable public computers. We have about 1,200 of them. There were 973,000 reservations last fiscal year. And we have 72 laptops available for checkout, but that's not all the mobile devices at our disposal. We also have an additional 160 laptops and 100 tablets deployed throughout the system for programs at branches and for use on the Maker spaceship. There's a lot of community value in these programs. We understand that, so we go to great lengths to ensure the security and privacy of our patrons' data. To that end, we wipe every computer at the end of every session, reverting it back to a default state that my team has built into each device. It gives our customers the ability to download whatever they want, to run whatever programs they want, and then ensures that the next person will get a clean device that's secure to use. All these computers, laptops, and tablets, whether they're reservable or being used in a program, are designed with this same focus in mind. Additionally, we had 431,000 people log on to our public Wi-Fi with their own devices last fiscal year, which amounts to about 1,500 per day for every day that the branches are open. We're constantly improving our infrastructure to manage devices and keep our staff working as efficiently as possible. Sometimes I feel like the infrastructure folks don't get enough attention, so I'm going to talk about a little bit of it here. None of this is real exciting to talk about, but as with most infrastructure, if it goes wrong, everyone will talk about it. So to keep that from happening, Some of the things we did this year was to redesign our DNS infrastructure, which ensures that patrons and staff are efficiently directed to the library resources they're looking for. We built in some additional redundancy into the system. We also upgraded our backup system, which I'm sure everybody knows how important that can be. We enhanced our server platform with a more secure version of Windows Server Core, and we continually upgrade our catalog database, which is the thing that makes the library go. It maintains every item record, every patron record, every check-in and check-out, acquisitions, fine tables, everything that makes the library go is part of this system. So we're constantly working on that in the background. These are some good examples of what the infrastructure folks do every day. So for the first time, SJPL has deployed a laptop checkout kiosk. That's a picture of it up there in the upper right-hand corner. It's pretty cool. You scan your library card and it spits a laptop out at you. Not into the air, you have to pull it out. But it was installed at our new Mount Pleasant neighborhood library as a pilot of sorts, but the technology has proven itself to be workable, and it's something we look forward to using in the future. At the request of our children's librarians, we also upgraded all the toddler computers to a product called ABC Mouse, and we've received good feedback from both patrons and staff with regards to that product. SJPL also worked with Microsoft to get educational pricing on all of our licensing. It resulted in about $100,000 in cost reduction, and it means that now we're preparing to upgrade all the public computers to Windows 10. We have some other new tools available. As was mentioned previously, 3D printers are now at every branch and will be available for programming in the future. We have virtual reality equipment at 4 of the branches, and we'll be deploying it at a 5th branch later this year. On the staff side of things, we're upgrading the phone system to a new voice over IP system at all the branches, and we've streamlined the onboarding process for new employees. All these upgrades should help staff to continue providing all these great services and programs to our customers. And with that, I'll turn it over.
So in the Park and Rec side, as we're slowly beginning to build up our technology as well as our infrastructure for all of our community programs, as part of the 5G broadband agreements through the city manager smart city team, they connected us with AT&T with the goal of providing at least 100 digital devices in neighborhoods where older adults and seniors were not connected to the internet. This program, Tech for Good, was funded 2 community-based organizations, Somos Mayfair and UI Kai, in partnership with us, as well as the Youth Connection Foundation, which will be receiving the money and working closely with our department to provide services, those equipment and services to 6 of our community centers, the Alma Community Center, Alum Rock Community Center, Mayfair, McKinley, Roosevelt, and 7 Trees. These centers were chosen by AT&T because of the diversity of the community members who will benefit from the device sharing. Not only will seniors have access, but children and teens, families, and unsheltered individuals through our regional community centers. These devices are scheduled to be purchased in November. The Somos Mayfair project, they received $25,000 worth of funding to support reaching residents who may not be familiar with the community center services, and will be PRNS's marketing partner when digital literacy programming starts. Somos will also act as an important partner in notifying residents when the online census can be completed in a trusting and welcoming environment. UI Kai was directly funded $85,000 for this project to also purchase devices and to provide more digital literacy classes because of their personal experience that they've had working with seniors and enhancing their digital literacy skills. To support Tech for Good in our neighborhood centers such as Alma, Elm Rock, and McKinley, we as a department needed to continue bring up our infrastructure and bring high-speed broadband to some of these centers. We're excited to be being very close to completing these projects, as well as several other broadband upgrades, including infrastructure projects at Berryessa, which will be our last hub community center to have high-speed internet connection, Gardner, and Welch Park to enhance our ability to play a role in citywide census and the digital literacy initiative. And throughout the years, we'll be continuing to work with the Smart City team and IT for the future rollout of public Wi-Fi across all of our centers.
And before we conclude this update, we did want to give a quick update on the digital literacy quality standards and the inclusion fund and that process. So as you know, quality is one of the guiding principles of all of our education and digital literacy work. And in keeping with the process that was employed in creating the early education quality standards, the library is chairing the Digital Literacy Quality Standards Ad Hoc Committee of educational and community-based organizations to create a set of appropriate quality standards that can be used for in all city-sponsored digital literacy programming. We've got a great group. We have representatives from places like the Silicon Valley Education Foundation, the Tech Exchange, the Franklin McKinley Children's Initiative, Somos Mayfair, the County Office of Education, and Stanford, as well as 2 members of the Library and Early Education Commission. The members have been charged with researching best practices, providing subject matter expertise, as well as community-specific knowledge, and ultimately to create a set of quality standards to ensure program efficacy for all of the digital literacy programs in San Jose. The California Emerging Technology Fund, or CETF, as you may see it some places, will also be a key partner in this work, as they have been chosen by the city to manage the recently established Digital Inclusion Fund. The fund seeks to diminish the digital divide in San Jose through grant funds, and will utilize the digital literacy quality standards in their work after they have been created and adopted. These standards will include recommendations regarding data collection methods, and analyses of this data will be used to determine program quality and efficacy. The Digital Literacy Quality Standards Ad Hoc Committee convened for the first time in August. We just had another meeting this week. And the committee will continue to meet monthly through December, seeking to have a set of standards prepared to bring to this committee for review in spring of 2020. We're very excited by the progress made by this group and are looking forward to continuing to work with them. And that concludes our update today. Thank you so much for your time, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you for such a fun presentation. I'm going to look to my colleagues, Councilmember Foley.
What exciting work you have. Thank you for those reports and the one on infrastructure too. Not boring at all, very necessary. So thank you for sharing that with us. I have a question about Dash.
Yes.
What age group does that target?
So the Dash robot specifically can be used for K through 5. There is another robot called Dot that's very similar that's used for the pre-readers, so that would be in the, I would say, probably 3 to 5 range. And then there is a slightly more advanced version called a Q that can be used for 6th through 8th grade.
Do we, and this is all run through the library system, so how does word get out about these programs?
That's a great question. We do quite a lot of outreach. It really depends on the location. We have our sort of standard outreach that we do, online postings, on the library website and events calendar. But we really also try to do a lot of community-based outreach depending on the site where the event is taking place. These will be in District 5, so we'll be working closely with the schools that are nearby. A lot of our coding outreach that we've done thus far has been very closely with the school districts that are near the branch locations. In this case, that would be Alum Rock and the Mount Pleasant school districts. We have great relationships with them, and we'll continue to get the word out to them about all of the programming that we do. In addition to, regularly scheduled community outreach events, my staff also oversees the Maker Spaceship, which is our mobile maker space, and we're always giving out information when we take that out to events as well.
So this is the pilot program in District 5 that has been generously funded by District 5. Thank you. That's wonderful opportunity for our kids. How do we, or at what point will we see this expanded to other parts of the city?
I would say quite soon. We have used the dashes a little bit.
And how much do we have to donate in order to see that happen?
We can certainly chat offline about that. We actually do have a set of dashes that we have previously had at the library that we've used on board the Maker Spaceship. So there have been some programming using them already. This is more of a targeted pilot that we're hoping to learn more about how best to reach some of the other age groups that we haven't done before. But we would love to, and certainly plan to expand this out once we kind of see how the pilot goes, see what we learn from it, and decide how best we could expand to all of the districts.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the robotics component, have we or are we, Dash is wonderful for a certain age group, but middle schoolers and above are working with Legos and VEX at the high schools. Are we looking at those kind of partnerships or those kind of team creations in robotics at our libraries, or is this beyond the scope of the libraries? And Jill's shaking her head yes, or that it's not beyond the scope.
It's not beyond our scope. It hasn't been our focus in the coding program as of yet. We've still been really building the infrastructure of the coding 5K. I think now that we are at a place where we have really met that attendance goal that we had set for ourselves, that we can think more deeply around how do we then deepen and expand. And I certainly do think that middle and high school age activities is a big priority for us moving forward. We started more in the elementary school range, but would love to get deeper into the middle and high school areas. We've done a little bit with middle school robotics using another robot called the Finch. That's a little bit more tailored to that age group. And we're excited to really look into what else is out there and how might we implement some of those higher level pieces.
I really appreciate that. Our kids today are so adept at technology that Dash, while it seems complicated to me, to them, if I had a 2-year-old, the 2-year-old would pick it up and do it I think, because, we all have, if we have kids, we're handing them our phones and they're solving our problems, right? So I'd love to make sure that we're not, the program is continually growing and challenging to all age groups because they are more sophisticated with this than we are. Maybe not you, because you're a little bit younger, but for me, certainly. And I just want to be able to challenge our middle school kids who maybe aren't getting the opportunity in their middle schools, but could at the library if we have that opportunity. And the Legos and others, they create teamwork as well and competitions, and there's a lot that can be learned from that teamwork and competition as well. And it's not just coding, it's marketing, it's business plan, it's a lot of other things. So if we can move into that at the middle school and the high school, I think that would really challenge our kids, and we'd find, obviously there's a need because we've sold out beyond our expectations, and you should be commended for that. But so our kids are starving for it. Let's continue and expand and challenge them more. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Let's see, did I have any? Oh, I had a question about the devices. Moving on to the computers at the libraries that you say are being wiped after every use? So I go in, I use it for an hour, someone comes over and wipes it after me? Is that what you're saying? Or those are the ones that
No.
are taken away? Those are the portable ones? No, okay.
After every session, when you're done, that happens in the background on the machine. Nobody has to touch it.
Automatically?
Yeah.
No, I know that. They're washing, no. Okay, those out in public who are watching this, I know, I look like an idiot. No, I didn't, not using
No,
that term,
I
I didn't mean
understand.
that. But, but it's automatic. Someone leaves the screen and walks away, and it's automatically, whatever they were doing is wiped.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting. All right, thank you. That's all for me.
Wonderful. Any of my, Councilmember Carrasco.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this. It's a very, I don't know anything about coding either, or any of that stuff. I'll be the first to admit, it was, all of this technical development really came after my time or whenever my brain was ready to learn. So maybe at some point I'll ask you to teach me a little bit. But I just want to say, I just think programs like these are so important, especially in those neighborhoods where, and we have them all in every single district. And I'm going to be very mindful when I advocate for my district. I know we have a very high concentration, but children who are coming from poor backgrounds or hardship or have not had the same opportunities as other folks, they're just throughout the entire city. And we have to figure out how we're going to support them in this fast, rapidly changing world, especially when it comes to technology and when we refer to the digital divide. It's, I don't think it's a digital divide that's narrowing. I think it keeps growing, and as we see the economic stratification becoming wider and wider, then we'll continue to see a need for programming like these for our kids. So I really wanted to thank you for a very thoughtful program. You have to make it fun, otherwise kids are not going to engage. And even for seniors, you know, you have to make it fun so that I can engage, right? Shut up. It was meant just as a point of conversation, not for you to agree. But, and you know, and one thing I want to point out, now that we have our, you know, Librarian of the Year still here with us, is that one of the things that is just always blows my mind is when I make the comparison of when I used to go to the library and, you know, we weren't allowed to engage in anything other than, at that time, was pulling out the little file to look for your research material and then sit down with the book and try and understand what you were researching. And now the engagement that's happening around the libraries, it's not your mother or your grandmother's library anymore. It's really a place where, you know, and especially for District 5, where children first and foremost go to be safe. Because a lot of the families are working 2 or 3 jobs. They're not going to be home when the kids get home. So it is what it is. But while we have them there, while we have them captured to be able to produce the kind of programming that's going to engage them and give them the skills that they need so that they can finish their homework or so that they can envision themselves in a bigger world than just the community that they live in. And I think that's what the library is. You know, it reminds me of Dr. Seuss' book, you know, Oh, the Places You'll See. I don't really remember all of that. But it really is, I think, our job to help children who haven't had some opportunities explore who they are within this vast world. And you're doing that, I think, through this program to be able to connect them. It's like it's learning a different language, right? Now you're bilingual or trilingual, whatever it is. Maybe you speak Spanish, English, and coding. It's a whole other language that opens up a lot of doors. And I think we need to look at it in that way. It's like, how are we preparing our youth of tomorrow so that Silicon Valley doesn't feel like it's in another universe, but literally it's just 7 miles away, in some cases, 11 miles away. I've been to some of those campuses, and I know that for our kids, that seems like it is in another state. And so this begins to close some of that divide. We have a lot of work to do. I do have to give you props again, Jill and your entire staff, for one, being very innovative and creative, but the satellite library at Mount Pleasant, as we know, it's a corner of my district, which borders District 8, has very little resources in that corner. And maybe a mile and a half to the next library doesn't seem very far for people who really have those kind of resources. But for a lot of our kids, it just, again, it's in another state. They can't get there to that library. So being able to offer quality programming, I want to emphasize that, quality programming, especially in the satellite libraries, because I think some people think, oh, satellite library, it's like that little library in the neighborhood that you go and you grab a book and then, you know, but it's so much more than that. And you started up the pilot program for the, what is it, the laptop checkouts, right? The laptop checkouts. And I don't know how that's going. I'm hoping that that's successful because some of our kids don't have access to any of that. And so I wanted to thank you for that. I did want to ask you, how long do we have funding for to do this in the different libraries?
The coding program in general, or
The coding
the Dash?
program? Well,
Um,
I thought the coding program and Dash were coding involved.
They are. The Coding 5K Challenge, I mean, we can continue to run that indefinitely.
And then the
Um,
Dash?
And the dashes, again, once we have the equipment and we've been through the training, we can continue to replicate that.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, that's great news. Okay, so the last thing I'll just say in closing, use my office to get the word out and to get folks, drag them in, because I think it might take a little coaxing for people to understand what we're doing now. It's not always, seen as something that is going to be beneficial or might be fun, but let's see how we can really create a buzz around the programming that's happening in the libraries. And thank you again for doing this. I see it more than just, a program that's coming through the library, but rather really offering tools for our kids so that they can be competitive in the future and really opening up their minds to explore other career options that maybe they hadn't thought about. And this is just a great start. And so thank you for bringing the fun to the libraries, for sure.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Jimenez.
Almost forgot my name,
No.
I-
No, it doesn't matter.
I do have a question. It's around the, let me find exactly where it was. It was the ad hoc committee on quality standards. I think it's met once so far? Or-
Twice now.
or
We had a
twice.
meeting
Ah.
just earlier this week.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to understand, so with regard to quality standards, I know what that means, but, so is that ad hoc committee just looking at the way we're doing things and making sure that they're sort of done in such a way that they meet certain standards, a baseline of, or is that essentially?
Correct, yes. So similar to what we did when we brought the early education quality standards before this committee, there was not a single sort of overall acknowledged set of standards for digital literacy programming. It's still a very new sort of conversation in the educational space. And so we had put together this committee as a way of looking at existing resources, looking at standards that are out there, and trying to, adapt them to ensure that it meets the needs of the community that we have here in San Jose, and that we can use it to ensure that there is a baseline of quality for all of the programs, whether it's through the library, through the PRNS, through a grant-funded program that the city provides funding for, that there is that baseline of quality across the board.
Okay, and so I appreciate that. That's what I thought it was, but I'm wondering if in that conversation, and maybe it's in here somewhere, and you guys are doing a lot, and I try to sort of remember everything you're doing, which is wonderful, I think. But I try to wrap my head around some of these things, and so the question I have is, are we, like, how are we, and I apologize if I missed it, or if you told us before, but how are we measuring whether these programs are actually, because, we have sort of indicators, X number of kids got this, and X number of kids were in that, which I think is wonderful. But I'm wondering, like, how do we, are we like, I think I'd be fascinated to know if there was like a longitudinal study or something where it showed like these kids that were exposed to this 5 years down the line, we're tracking, So with that thinking, is there anything going on as it relates to everything we're doing to track some of that?
I would say that those things are, I think, going to come out of the committee. Once we have the set of standards, then we can look at adopting a set of evaluations that can really measure and provide us with that baseline information. We are also always on the hunt for other research that exists that other people have done so that we can really learn what are the best practices, what are the industry standards. As I said, this is still a pretty new field in the educational space, so it's developing kind of as we go along, and we're constantly on the look for new information that can inform our practice. So I would say that, yes, we're still in the process of kind of determining what are those sort of, metrics, but that we should have a better idea when we bring those standards back to the committee.
Okay, because I appreciate, certainly the resources, and there's a lot, it seems like there's companies that are involved in providing tablets, which I think is great. But one thing that I guess we don't even necessarily, to a certain extent, need to measure is just the exposure is important, right? And which I think is valuable. But, at what point do we have a better sense? And I'd like to get to that point eventually, right? Getting a better sense as to whether whatever money we're investing here, whatever that looks like, if it is producing an outcome, right? Because many of my colleagues, it's not always me, but there's many of us on the council that are consistently concerned about outcomes. What outcomes? I'm a numbers person, outcomes. And so I think it'd be good to see that here at some point, and I look forward to seeing the numbers as those develop, because, I think this is good, but I just, in the end, how impactful of a difference is it making, right, is what I'm curious about. And I say that having kids of my own. I think about, digital literacy, which I think is wonderful, and this is just more a comment, but, I have a son who I have a hard time trying to get him to read, just literacy generally, let alone digital literacy. And so just the interplay within those and how that works is of interest to me as well. But I look forward to seeing the outcome from the committees. So thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, I do have a couple of questions. One is about that Apple partnership that you've just established. Congratulations. I think it brings you like about 90 iPads, and they're all targeted to teen centers or headquarters. I wonder if you would consider our Eastridge Teen Center that, I think the services are Friday to Saturday, right, Neil? And these are the kids, in the east side. There isn't any other teen center around. The closest library, so there is the library access gap. There is the Evergreen Library. Is there plans to expand?
Yeah, well, I'd say if it's for the Tech for Good partnership, where we're getting the 100 laptops, or the 100 iPads. Is that the?
Well, I saw that there was that partnership, and then the target locations was going to be at the Teen HQ, Teen Challenge for Teens, Edenville branch, and then the Seven Trees branch, which all are great locations. I'm just advocating for the Eastridge Teen Center.
That's, yes, I think that that's a new pilot that we're trying out. I would say that my team goes out with the Makerspace ship to Eastridge quite frequently, so we could potentially look at something there, see if there's a partnership there. But I think we would be open to partnership. I think some of that will depend on some of the funders, but I think we could certainly explore that moving forward.
Great, and I know it's, the Maker ship sometimes targets younger children, right? It's not necessarily the teens that are coming into the Makerspace, right?
I think that, so there's equipment on board and we have lesson plans for all ages. The most frequent requests we get from the community are more in the elementary space. But one of our goals for this fiscal year is to increase responses from high schools and middle schools and other places that serve those higher level students. So I think there may be some new things coming in that direction as we look to the new fiscal year.
Well, as you expand, I'd love to have Eastridge as one of those on your list. It's definitely a very non-traditional place, so we're getting folks who lack a positive place to hang out, and our PRNS staff is doing a really wonderful job in supporting these kiddos out there, and so I think this would be a great opportunity for them, and for both, right? They probably are your target population. The next item I wanted to ask about was
the Youth Connections Foundation, so they're doing those focus groups to figure out like what's the appropriate digital device and all that, and locations for technology. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, that's for the Tech for Good program.
Yeah, for the device lending program, yes. So I was just wondering, who's part of that focus group? Because what those, I guess it depends who they're asking,
Yeah.
right? That you'll get the type of answer.
And that's part of the effort. The Youth Connections Foundation hired a consultant,
Right.
Leslie Rodriguez, to go out there, and, you know, she's well connected across the communities to outreach to neighborhoods. So we're focusing, you know, both on seniors, teens, and families all around the neighborhoods that we've targeted with AT&T. You know, and part of the development of the agreement of the neighborhoods they want to serve, it was, you know, a bit of a back and forth in which neighborhoods they wanted us to focus on. So part of it's through our staff, it's through neighborhood, it's through the nonprofit partnerships. You know, we have the relationship through this effort as well through Somos Mayfair, you know, which our intent is to be able to get directly into those communities that, you know, traditionally have been harder to reach. And Laura here is also running our program, so if she has any direct information, she can provide it as well.
Yes, and so I also want to add that we've also had focus groups with our unhoused population. And so, as Neil mentioned, you know, they went out to like the Mayfair Community Center, Seven Trees, and also Leslie is also doing some asset mapping and also looking at best practices, not only within San Jose, but also Santa Clara County, to see what our other organizations and entities doing around serving the underserved population. So she's doing a lot of work, has been working also closely, as Neil mentioned, to some of our strong advocates, our strong organizations like Somos Mayfair, Aki, you know, those organizations as well, who have a pretty good handle of those underserved populations as well, so.
I'm glad you brought that up, Laura, because later on we're having, we're going to hear from the Housing Department on the housing and security among families with children. And one of the percentages that really stood out for me was out of the HMIS system with the county, of the 6,000 homeless people that they have in that system, 71% are women, and then they're single head of household, if you will, right? And they have children. So we obviously have a population that is, like you said, completely underserved. So now we have to figure out how to connect with them, right? I'm going to make a suggestion, not to say that Welch Park is one of those locations where people congregate and where you're going to find the unhoused populations that I just mentioned, but this is an area that doesn't have library access, right? So I think for future consideration, I'd love to be on that list for the device lending program, since I know that we had tried, I think our timing was just off with our what is it called, the Bridge Library, right? And we missed our opportunity, but our folks are still waiting for a replacement of the Barnes and Nobles. That was, you know, just really for a long time, that's where people went to access books, at the mall. And so when that was gone, you know, it's just really left a hole. So I'm hoping that we can find some different ways to bring people together, whether it's the device lending program or, you know, the iPads or a Bridge Library. I'm just hoping that we can connect folks here. And I'm glad you're thinking about those underserved populations and how we all kind of cross.
And we're also mindful that there's room to grow, and so we are looking at ensuring that at least within the first couple of years that our devices are mobile. So we have talked about we're going to have to have them move around, right, until we can hopefully have all of our community centers with their own devices that then they can lend out to their surrounding communities and neighborhoods. So yes, we're very mindful of the fact that we have a ways to go, but we will be building kind of that expansion plan to make sure that we are able to reach all the communities that don't have, whether it's a community center or library accessible.
Well, as you well know, you all were part of successfully helping to launch that and open that up, and it'd been closed for decades, right? I mean, formally closed by the city under reuse. So it's definitely an area that I think is doing really great in terms of classes. I got the other day a nice banner from the kids who were part of the summer camp, and they had their little hands all over the place. And so it is absolutely a place where our families are coming and congregating, and I'm hoping that every time they come, they expect for more, right? And that we deliver. And so these are the types of next steps that I want my community to benefit from, right? So thank you for saying that there's going to be growth there. I also wanted to point out with the public computing, Wi-Fi and technology updates, I saw that in Evergreen, we were one of the highest in terms of use for the desktop computers. I think it was after Hillview and Tully, we're about 40,000. So, you know, I guess I just want to reiterate, the need is there, right? The desktops are being utilized. And so I hope that that also leads into further programming in in that area. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry to check in with you. Councilmember Sparta.
No, that's okay, I was just dealing with something. I had actually a comment, a suggestion on the device lending and deployment. I think it's gotten off to a wonderful start, and obviously, we're all excited about it, and everybody wants it in their libraries.
Yes, we do.
And, but it was interesting because I noticed, looking at the device lending and then looking at the highest uses of public computing, if we could correlate it there, because obviously you have MLK and you have Alum Rock and Tully Library. It's actually, and Joyce Allen, was it Joyce? No, it was Hillview. And
Tully is the second.
Edenvale, yeah. And so there's a correlation, obviously, between high-needs communities like Edenvale and Tully to needing public computer use. And so if we could make that correlation with the device lending, and just sort of tie that in moving forward, you know, Tully is actually a relatively small library compared to some others, but it has a very wide catchment area. Kids from Santee, if they want to go to a public library, they go to Tully, which is, you know, it's a schlep, it's far. So anyway, I just wanted to draw your attention that in the future, if we could correlate that use where there is a demonstrably higher need and look at it that way in expanding the device lending program. Thank you.
Thank you for making that point. I want to tell you that Hillview is the first, Tully is the second, Evergreen's the third in terms of desktop computers.
Yeah, I mean, really,
So,
to
yeah,
draw that correlation.
Right,
Yeah.
follow the data.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, it makes sense. Okay, so do I have a motion?
Motion to accept. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That moves forward. All right, so we are on item 3. And this is a consolidated annual performance evaluation report for housing.
So good afternoon. I'm Reagan Henninger with the Housing Department. I'm joined by my colleague, Robert Lopez, to talk to you about the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report called the CAPER. This is our annual report to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. It's basically telling HUD how we spent our federal dollars. So we're presenting this to you today. And then the next item on our agenda this afternoon is our annual homeless report. So we wanted you to have that full picture of how we spend our federal dollars and how it ties into our homeless plans and spending. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert to walk you through our report.
All right, thank you, Reagan, and good afternoon, council members. I don't have a robot, so I apologize ahead of time.
It's just us.
I might have something better. It's a HUD-required federal report. I know that this is always an exciting time when I come to committee or council. But I think Reagan kind of set the stage about the performance and evaluation of our federal funding, and I think that HUD really wants us to be transparent on how we spend our federal funds, and they want us to be so transparent that they require a 5-year consolidated plan, which is our way of prioritizing our funding for the years of 2015 through 20. And for each year, we also have to provide an annual action plan, which says how we're going to provide or how we're going to allocate our annual funding. And then, coming full circle, at the end of the year, we also provide a performance and evaluation report. And I promise that's the last time I mention HUD. All right. So these were our expenditures for the last year, and you'll notice that CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant, and our Home Partnership Grant are the bulk of our federal funding expenditures for the year, and that's because they're our most flexible, and also we receive a pretty large allocations annually. And Home can go towards supporting the development of affordable housing, and CDBG can also go towards construction, capital improvements and public services. And then you'll notice that we also have HOPWA, which is housing support for persons with AIDS, and our ESG grant, which is an emergency solutions grant that focuses on homeless services and shelter operations. So in the last year, we spent about $16 million, which is a little bit above our annual allocation, but that's because of our capital improvement projects, which are usually multi-year projects that we hold reserves so that we can fully pay and expend that funding when those capital improvements occur. So as I mentioned earlier about the consolidated plan, we lay out our priorities for funding services. And our first one is increase and preserve affordable housing opportunities. You'll notice in the picture Second Street Studios. If it looks familiar, it's because we just celebrated the completion of this wonderful development. And this was funded by home funds. So that was about $6 million of home funding that went into this development. And right now we're currently, I think it's fully occupied, and we'll be closing this out in our HUD report later this year. Right now we have 252 affordable apartments in progress, and our HOPWA grant has also helped 68 persons living with HIV/AIDS remain in rental housing. Our second priority is respond to homelessness and its impact. You'll see a lot of our numbers on here, but I kind of want to focus on some of the outcomes. As Councilmember Jimenez mentioned, our memo is chock full of outcomes, and I want to focus kind of on our newest program, which is homelessness prevention, which we're funding with our ESG fund. 26 families have been assisted through this program, and 100% of our 26 families have remained in stable housing 6 months after they received assistance, which is huge. And I also want to highlight that 1,476 homeless folks living on the street have received outreach services, and these are our hardest to serve folks that are experiencing homelessness. And PATH and Home First do a great job of getting them to complete a VI SPDAT, getting them into the community queue so that they can receive other services and hopefully permanent or some type of temporary housing. And also for job training, Downtown Streets team is also a huge asset that provides jobs to homeless individuals, and they set up about 17 folks with permanent jobs. Our third priority is to strengthen neighborhoods, and this is a two-parter, so there's public services, and there's also capital improvements. We'll talk about public services first, and we divide this into two categories. The first one is neighborhood engagement. These two agencies are San José Mayfair and Community University that focus on leadership development. They also do urban agriculture through our Vegelution program, our crisis intervention through Amigos de Guadalupe, and also empower folks to be a participant in their neighborhood. So actually in the picture is one of the graduating classes from San José Mayfair. For senior services, the Health Trust Meals on Wheels program and our Portuguese Organization for Social Services also provide seniors with a number of services that help them thrive and stay social. That includes delivering hot meals, offering door-to-door transportation, and wellness checks. And for both these programs, a high number of survey respondents have reported that they've definitely changed their lives and have helped them to build the skills necessary to either access to be more participatory in their neighborhoods, I should say. And a new impact: 89% of participants utilize a tool or idea they learned within the same year. On to the capital projects. These ones are currently in progress, and the one on the right is more for enhanced crosswalks. So we have a lot of streets that are wide that don't have the streetlight crosswalks, and they include pedestrian activated rectangular rapid flashing beacons, ADA ramps, concrete medians, signs and markings to increase health and security in multiple neighborhoods. And the picture on the left is our green alleyway, which takes bare soil and asphalt and replaces with recycled green content and permeable paved surfaces that filter stormwater. And these also absorb less sunlight and lower temperatures. On the non-construction side, we have some of our most popular programs that are provided by Rebuilding Together and Habitat for Humanity. These are our emergency minor repair program that help low-income homeowners and seniors. And we recently got monitored by HUD, and they visited about 5 of our clients that receive these services. And it was pretty awesome to see the clients that we served and how appreciative they were of Rebuilding Together, and our HUD monitor really loved it as well. And that's why we kind of focus a majority of, or not a majority, but a large number of funding on these two programs. Additionally, we also partner with our code enforcement department to do enhanced code enforcement in special areas. And our last priority is to promote fair housing choices. This is a consortium of 4 agencies led by the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley. It includes Project Sentinel, Asian Law Alliance, and the Senior Adults Legal Assistance. And as you can see, these programs help to advise their clients about any investigations into tenant discrimination, and also help to keep them in their homes in case of eviction. Just looking at the stats, there were 38 legal representations. Of the 38, 15 households remained in their home, and 7 successful negotiations for reasonable accommodations were made. 10 are ongoing. But one of the most important impacts or stats that we have is that 99% of people receiving client briefings and legal representations reported that they had improved access or availability of housing. So our partners are really making a difference with their legal services and representations. So next steps, we'll be going to City Council on September 24th so that we can hold a public hearing and approve the CAPER. Then we submit the report to HUD on September 29th. And a little bit preview into the future, we'll be coming back with our 2020-25 consolidated plan in the winter and spring. This will come to NSE, it'll go to CED, it'll come to City Council. Well, it's going to be a whole roadshow to get input on our next 5 years of funding priorities. So we're pretty excited about that, and yeah, so I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Any questions? Councilmember Jimenez.
Just a few questions. So this is a report we're going to be submitting to HUD, so in effect, you're just reporting out. I mean, this is not the time, the upcoming one, 2020, 2025, or 2020, 2021 would be the time to really provide guidance as to, let's do this and that. But I just had a question, and to the extent this relates to the way we do this in the future, but if you go back several slides, I think one of them where you had a breakdown of numbers, like 1,000 something or other folks, oh, there it is. So the top one, 1,476 homeless people received outreach services, and then 5,685 outreach contacts. So out of the 5,685, 1,476?
Yeah, so that's a great question, actually. So these are revisits, right? So we've touched 1,476 homeless folks, but we go back because outreach is a constant
Building a relationship.
yeah, it's building relationships with our clients so that we can get them into permanent housing.
So say that one more time, just so I understand. So the 1,476 is
Are the individual, so unduplicated, we call it unduplicated, so individual clients that we've touched, and the 5,000 number is the duplicated amount of folks or duplicate amount of times, I should say, that we've reached out to these
So
folks.
some of the 1,476 are also within the 5.
Right.
6.
So
Okay.
say one of the 1,400, or majority of the 1,476 has received 2, 3, 4, 5 outreach services.
Okay.
To continue to build.
And
that
the other thing
relationship.
is, and I apologize, this, the whole sort of the homeless sort of, infrastructure, everything we do around homelessness, there's a lot of moving parts, and for me, it's challenging keeping track of what we're doing, when we did it, and who we did it to, and all that. And so, so I pardon this question, because I probably should know the answer, but outreach services, when we say they received outreach services, it's not that they accepted assistance or a relocation. Yes, I'll go to the hotel, you can take me to the shelter. It's more just I'm receiving you, I'm allowing myself to be talked to.
Right,
Okay.
and that's usually half the battle, because a lot of the times our outreach workers will go out and they'll ask if they can talk to them to help them get them in the community queue, and a lot of the times they'll say no or not now. So these are the people that said yes, we want to talk to you, we want to engage, and we want to sign up for the community queue, or we want to try to find a.
And so the total amount then of people, unduplicated people we touched, is that 5,685?
It's the 1,000.
It's a 1,476, okay.
And also to emphasize, this is kind of like a small piece. This is the federal funding side of the homeless services. Kelly, my colleague, will actually be reporting on our annual.
Exactly, and this is what I mean.
This is going to be a small piece of that.
Right. Okay, so I guess the other question I had, and maybe it will be answered in a future presentation, is that I know obviously Home First does some of the outreach as well as PATH, and so here, who in effect is doing most, if not all of this? Or is it a mixture?
These are the stats for both Home First and PATH.
Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to seeing, just so you know where I'm going, I look forward, I'm in the process of really thinking more deeply about the way we do things, and so I very much look forward to getting the information later in the winter and the spring, because, I think, looking at the numbers, it seems, okay, we're obviously doing stuff, but I can't help but think that we're just spinning our wheels, and so, and not to take away and I mean us as a city, not you as a department or you individually, but just I think we need to figure some things out, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Questions?
Yeah, I have questions.
Councilmember Esparza.
On page 9, under the work experience program with San Jose Streets team, I had a question around just the employment. If you could just describe that program a little bit more, to me, I'd appreciate it. So 67 program participants, 16 graduated the program, and then 15 were employed 3 months or longer. This is the Mayor's Gang Task Force Hotspots employment. Are we maintaining relationships with the other 52 people that we have, we're working with and talking to? I just had a question about that, because it is the Gang Task Force Hotspots. It's important work.
Yeah, Downtown Streets Team definitely keeps in contact with those folks, so they stay in the program until they can find a permanent job. And just to remind you, or just to kind of shed more light on Downtown Streets Team, they're often out doing litter and trash removal in some of our encampments and the waterways and in special areas that need it. I think Monterey Road, Downtown Streets is also part of that program. So Downtown Streets will definitely keep in contact or keep them in their program until they graduate.
Okay, okay.
I think Downtown Streets Team is also responsible for partnering with jobs or with employers so they can get those folks into those permanent jobs.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great, and do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that moves forward, and thank you so much for the report. I look forward to the next phase. We're going to work on the next 5-year plan.
Yeah, and I think we come back in October.
Yeah, wonderful.
Would you allow me to ask a question before she starts her presentation? Just very general.
Before their presentation, you want to ask a question?
I'm so sorry. I'm out of order, and you're out of order. I apologize. Can you please take a seat? We've been waiting for this item for so long that I forgot that we had a gentleman here, Robin Reynolds, from the Bill Wilson Center. This is on agenda item 3 that we just finished hearing, and possibly we could have a vote once again in case anybody wants to change their mind. But Robin, if you're still here, would you want to comment? This is Robin Reynolds. We've been here for a while, so that person might have left.
It looks like he's left.
Okay, so we will move forward. Thank you so much for the report. And we have a request, I'm gonna look at our city attorney. Before this presentation, Councilmember Jimenez would like to ask a question. Okay, great.
You're going to see it's a very general question, but I have to go to a VTA meeting. But I wanted to ask you, I know there's efforts currently in place between the county and the city, and I think Lee Wilcox is leading some of that in city man. And I'm curious as to just very generally, right? You don't have to get in tons of details. I got to go to just where are we with that? And I'm not sure if you were going to touch on that, but.
Yeah, so we're going to touch on it. It's sort of at the end of our presentation, but what that group is really focused on right now is the new community plan to end homelessness. So our county has a 5-year plan for ending homelessness. We're on year 5 right now, so we're looking ahead to the next 5 years, and that's really where we've been spending a lot of our time and our efforts jointly with the county and with Destination Home.
Right. And I'll leave you with this, so thank you for that. And so that's actively taking place.
Yeah.
So one of the things I had mentioned to Lee, and I'll just mention to you, is I think whatever plan emerges, I think to a certain extent, some of that responsibility or that burden is going to lay on our shoulders to figure out, okay, this is what we do to move forward. And so I would very much like to be more informed, and certainly I could do more outreach, but get a better understanding as to how we're going to be plugged into the process, even some sort of study session or informational memos to give us a status, because it's something that's very important. I feel like it sort of goes off into the back room and then it reemerges a few months later with tidbits of information. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and that's about the 5-year plan, so they could follow up with you offline. Thank you so much, Councilmember. Okay, so we are going to hear the report on homelessness and housing insecurity among families with children. Thank you. Hello.
We're on the annual report.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. I know, you're super excited about the last
Oh, I'm so
agenda
sorry.
item. We're almost there.
Almost there, yes.
This is the annual report. So this report is looking at last fiscal year's homeless activities and programs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to walk you through the report.
Okay, so I'm Kelly Hemphill, and I am the Homelessness Response Manager for the city. And today we'll be talking about the city-funded homeless programs during last fiscal year. The focus of this annual report is on the Housing Department's strategic priorities to addressing homelessness. And so I'll cover 3 areas: our performance, or our grantees' performance, coordination and collaboration, especially with the county and Destination Home, and strategic planning for the future. But first, I want to start with a story.
It's not a robot, but it's a video.
Danae asked me when I first moved in, are you okay with bedding? Because she had helped me at the other place, but it was too, rather big. And so she bought me this one, which is perfect. The bed is brand new, and I really appreciate it. As you know, I opened a store in 2000 on Baskin. That's when I started to do a lot of the projects and work. And 2 of the contractors, when the mortgage crisis happened, I had to close the store, and 2 of them didn't pay me, and to the tune of, low 6 figures, First of all, I went through the savings. After that, it was the occasional job, and it's kind of hard when you're using your van to live in, but you're also like delivering material. So if you open the back door of the van, it's pretty obvious what's happening. I think the first thing I noticed when Pat took over is that your commitment to each individual and your caring and your compassion, very, very important. But also the fact that interaction with the person, keeping on top of this whole, because it's a case, it's a journey, and you've got to be there for them, and to know there's hope, to provide that hope, to provide that assistance. What I really and truly love about having homes coming to a safe and cozy place. The whole idea of going home, is just so heartwarming. Always thank God first, but beyond the Lord, I would say, all the people that have been there for me, my mother and you. So.
Way better than a robot.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that was Farhad, and he was in our rapid rehousing program and received assistance, rental assistance for about a year, and was able to take over the payments on his own afterwards and stay in his unit. Okay, so I'm going to provide some context about homelessness in San Jose. As you probably know, we have over 6,000 homeless individuals in San Jose, which is about 64% of the homeless population in the entire county. In San Jose, 84% of the homeless population is unsheltered. That means they're literally outside on the street, in encampments, in their vehicles. What we learned was that 30% of survey respondents in the 2019 homeless count, the surveys, reported job loss as the primary cause of their homelessness. And 68% reported the inability to afford rent as the primary obstacle of obtaining housing. We also saw a huge increase from 2017 to 2019, a 40% increase in our homeless population. And we also found that 83% lived in the county when they became homeless, and that 88% said that they would absolutely accept permanent affordable housing if it was available. new this year, we wanted to put a map out there just to show how many homeless people were counted in each council district. As you can see, together, 2 out of 10 districts make up 58% of the homeless population, Districts 3 and District 7. The rest are under 10%.
And I hate to interrupt you, but I just got word that some of our folks who've been waiting for the last item may need to leave early, so if we could be as concise as we can
All
without
right. You got it.
damaging the core story of what you're
Thank
going to
you.
share with us.
Absolutely. Okay, so our homeless strategies are housing-based solutions, interim housing, and crisis response interventions. So housing-based solutions, rental subsidies, access to permanent affordable housing, flexible financial assistance to prevent homelessness, interim housing, temporary assistance, temporary shelter, while people with housing subsidies are searching for permanent housing. And then crisis response, immediate basic needs, responding to people who are unsheltered, street-based services. We wanted to show our flow and how people enter our system, how people are referred out of homelessness and into housing opportunities. So prior to the community plan to end homelessness that is current today, there was no process by which we prioritized or focused our homeless resources. So unsheltered people were provided services and housing opportunities if they were connected to the right agency at the right time. So we implemented a community-wide assessment called a VI SPDAT, and that was going to match people with the most appropriate housing opportunity for them. And as a result of this focus, since the inception of the plan, almost 7,000 people have been permanently housed countywide. I also wanted to show that our systems are actually working. In fiscal year 18-19, 3,777 households countywide entered our homeless management information system for the first time. Yet, in the same time frame, we housed 1,993. I shouldn't say yet, we should be celebrating. That is amazing. We permanently house almost 2,000 households. So we know the systems are working, we just don't have enough resources for the people who are becoming homeless. They're becoming homeless at a far quicker rate than we can house them.
Can I just stop on one important
Oh, yeah.
month you will see here is May 2019, where our inflow almost matches our rate that we're housing people. That month is when we opened Second Street Studios. So I just really want to illustrate the need for more permanent supportive housing and housing built at extremely affordable levels.
Okay, and so this graph shows how the housing department has expended their money on homeless programs. As you can see, homeless programs make up 36% of the department's budget. And of that 36%, over half was spent on housing-based solutions. Here's a breakdown of the actual dollars spent in our different strategies. So overwhelming majority was spent on housing-based solutions, subsidies, affordable housing, development, things like that. And then I just wanted to illustrate how we spend our money with our two very primary strategies, our housing-based solutions and crisis response. This is how the funding was broken down. I wanted to spend a second to highlight the homelessness prevention system because it's a relatively new system to the county, yet we've seen quite a bit of success. 72% of the people that have been housed over the last couple years have been households with children. This 841 households actually makes up like 3,000 individuals and quite a few of them children. So I wanted to just highlight that. And we'll talk about this homeless prevention in our next presentation as well. So a little bit about housing-based solutions. I wanted, since I have this picture of Measure A, I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that over 1,000 affordable units countywide are in the pipeline for development, and about half of them are going to be permanent supportive housing units. So that's really exciting. And then I also wanted to just let you guys know that in the rapid rehousing program, there's about 1,600 households who are working with the rapid rehousing program countywide. And last fiscal year, 71% exited to permanent housing. So that program strategy is working. Also wanted to bring to your attention that in the city, we had a success of 83% for the city-funded programs. And then another little highlight, our Transition in Place program is a program intended to increase access to affordable units for our rapid rehousing participants. And we have about 97 units in our portfolio. And we gain access to affordable units in a number of different ways, but it's usually when a developer comes to our department requesting a loan, resyndications, things that happen with our wonderful production team, and I get pulled in. That's just a snapshot of housing-based solutions. We do so much. There's our pretty tiny homes and our Plaza Hotel. We have 2 interim solutions right now for people who are searching for permanent housing. The Plaza Hotel has been running for about 18 months or so, and it's both the Plaza and the Bridge Housing Communities will assist individuals searching for housing connected to a case manager. Bridge Housing Communities will have 80 units, up to 80 people, and the Plaza has 46. So that's been a really great addition to our strategies and allowing people to have a stable place to go while they're searching for permanent units. And then we have the crisis response intervention, which is where we spend a lot of time. And I think we do a lot of these programs very well. Since 84% of the homeless population is outside, we know that we have to bring the services to them. So this includes outreach and engagement. In the past fiscal year, Home First and PATH conducted almost 1,000 VI SPDAT assessments, which is their primary role. They are very high populators of the HMIS system, and the HMIS system is the primary, if not only way, that homeless people get connected to housing opportunities. So their role populating that system is critical. Another thing that another area of outreach is we have a homeless helpline that is managed by Home First. So homeless people can call a helpline to get individualized services and care. We've got emergency shelter. We have an ordinance that allows places of assembly to open their doors and provide shelter for homeless people. We have our overnight warming locations, which uses city-owned facilities to open their doors during inclement weather. We helped 417 unduplicated individuals in our overnight warming locations last season, which was only activated for about 40 days. We are going to have a motel voucher program, which will help enhance this need for emergency shelter. We have our mobile hygiene van that goes all the way around town, and we'll have another additional van as approved on Tuesday by council. But we did last year provide thousands of showers and loads of laundry to almost 1,000 people across San Jose. And another area is that the housing department internally operates a homeless concerns hotline. So we provide a centralized place where San Jose business owners and residents can call out of concern for a homeless person or a homeless encampment in their neighborhood. And this helps to inform where people are staying, but also informs us of where to deploy our outreach team. So we received about 6,500 calls last year. And then I did want to tell you guys a story, but I know maybe I'll have time to tell you a story, but I'm gonna shoot this over to Reagan so she can talk about our strategic planning.
So coming up, and I'll try and be brief here and maybe save it for our next presentation, but we have, as I mentioned, our community plan to end homelessness, which is our 5-year planning document. And this is a really important opportunity because the city, the county, nonprofits, other cities within the county, once we have this plan, we align our resources and our priorities to this plan. So we'll be starting a community engagement process now and coming to council sometime in early 2020 with that plan. And then for future funding opportunities, we mentioned the 5-year consolidated plan for HUD. That's really where we, as a city, develop our priorities for how we're going to spend our federal funds. So as we mentioned earlier, we've engaged a consultant. The consultant will be doing a lot of robust community engagement now and over the winter, and then we'll be back at committees and council in 2020 to discuss that. And then finally, we have another round of one-time state funding, which last year was called the Homeless Emergency Aid Program, or HEAP, and I think we're calling it just HAP now, the Homeless Aid Program. And we'll be bringing to council a proposed expenditure plan and priorities for that, probably early 2020. I think that concludes our report.
Wonderful, thank you. And before my colleagues have questions, I'd like to bring Karen Gillette, and after Karen, it's Itzana De La Cruz. And if there's any other community members who'd like to speak, please turn in a card.
Hello, my name is Karen Gillette, and I'm a homeless advocate and researcher. There are so many different topics to be discussed under this plan. I'd like to focus in on families with children, because I think that those are the most needy people, and I think that we have, you all have spoken about that need. I would like to say that some of the statistics that I've seen this afternoon were kind of confusing to me. The man who made the presentation before Kelly, I know Kelly pretty well, the other man I don't know that well, he showed a slide that said that 26 families had been assisted, and then Kelly just showed a slide that said over 800 families had been in some kind of assistance. So I'm a little confused with those numbers, as you may have been. I'm also confused by some of the information comes out with a HUD definition of homelessness. And of course, when we think about families with children, I think the McKinney-Vento definition is much more appropriate, but quite frankly, I don't know the difference. I think there are people here from the Department of Education that might be able to explain that to us. I do know that there is one wonderful program here at San Jose Family Shelter. I've been there many times, and I do a lot of volunteer work there with my church. It's really the only program that I understand even in the county that keeps families intact. The families stay together in this program. The families can have 90 days there. It's a service-rich program with on-site daycare, job, and housing assistance, and I really think that that's a program that could be replicated. So, thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Good afternoon. My name is Iteca de la Cruz. I am the homeless youth specialist at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. So I wanted to come and talk to you. I wish I could stay for the last item, but I have to go pick up my kiddos from daycare. I wanted to come and kind of shine some light on the McKinney-Vento families that thanks to the team who submitted the memo for the last item, that they included families, homeless families, and they also included McKinney-Vento youth. In conversation with my colleagues at the County Office of Ed, I did get some information from some of my colleagues, and I'd like to, regarding a need, a really high need for our homeless families, which is daycare. So some of my colleagues at the County Office of Ed, I'd like to submit this to the committee. Some of my colleagues have mapped what they call daycare deserts in the county, also including the city of San Jose. So that which includes a lot of the zip codes that you represent. In this document, you can see the unmet need for infant and toddler daycare, and you can see the unmet need for preschool age children. You can also, and this is a fairly new report, you can also access it at the URL that is on the front page for the full report. I just came across this today, but I thought it would be pertinent. I think a lot of our families have expressed, the families that I've worked with countywide and citywide have expressed the need for daycare, for them to try to get back up on their feet and maintain their jobs as they're living in their car or living in a hotel, motel. And a lot of them are couch surfing, which has been addressed in the memo. I just want to reiterate that and thank you all for including that, because the McKinney-Vento population is one that has historically been in the shadows, considering all the support that the homeless community gets from HUD financially. McKinney-Vento not so much historically, so thank you for that. And I can take questions if I'm allowed to.
Thank you, Itzaka. I don't have a question for you, but I just want to thank you for being so patient and for sharing. The next item does have a lot of response from that I think would be relevant to the comments that you've already made. So we are working really closely. Mary Ann Duan, your superintendent, is absolutely collaborative and bringing some information so that we can figure out how to best serve families with children, because obviously families aren't telling everybody that they're homeless or that they're couch surfing, because that endangers their children, or removal, right? Possible removal. So I know that you know these families very well, and I hope that we can continue to work with one another. This is just the first step in trying to figure out what the research will tell us, and what everybody's doing their own research, and what we're doing is, and our housing department is doing a really great job of just bringing all that information together. And so I think what you've brought to us today is really relevant, and it adds just to the picture of who what these families are dealing with, and also makes me think about the highest number of child abuse cases happens when children are 9 months old, right? And so, and if we have a gap in childcare for infants, I don't know what it looks like at this moment, but I know that that's typically the case. So thank you for bringing this forward, and I think if you leave your information, I'd love to continue to connect with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment cards? I'm not sure if Phil, I see you in the audience, and I wasn't sure if you were, okay, wonderful. Now I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Councilmember Esparza.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to make a couple points and then ask a question. So one of them is just the need to continue and expand crisis response interventions. It does take a number of touches and contacts to build a relationship and trust with folks to get them to be open to receiving services, because often they've been let down so many times over the years. And as we've ramped up a system to hopefully respond to the need more robustly, you know, they haven't seen that. They've just sort of have their own experiences, right? So we have to build up that trust in order to permanently place people into a home. But I also wanted to go to page 9 or slide 9. Where is it, slide 9? I can't see my own slides. There I am. So as we look at where we make our investments, our limited number of dollars towards addressing homelessness, I wanted to highlight the need to focus our precious dollars on housing-based solutions. Over the years, we have tried a lot of things, and we know what works and what doesn't work, and that money is so precious, and it's needed to build those solutions, to provide rent subsidies, to put people into permanent homes. And so I just wanted to point that out. We cannot lose sight. We're at, what, 52% on the slide before that. Right, is it 52%, or am I doing my math wrong? 54%. 54%. And as you know, Councilmember Jimenez, even though he left, he was right. He said a lot of the responsibility falls on our shoulders to sort of hold that line, to say this is where we are going to invest. In all the evidence that shows that housing is what works, we need to continue to do that. And so, you know, I know this is an issue that we all get pulled in different directions on, but we need to keep one thing in mind, is that housing works, and that's where the bulk of our dollars need to go, even though we do have all these other very legitimate needs. And so I'll get to my question, which is, there's the slide about inflow, and I didn't get the number down. Oh, there it is. So my question is, it's a question, and then, so it is basically, what are we doing to address inflow? Right, and that's a section in the community plan to end homelessness as we move forward. Again, to repeat my colleague, who's not here, but he's at VTA, so it's okay, is that falls on our shoulders, because we're looking at this in a very siloed way without sort of looking at the decisions around employment and other things that impact homelessness. And so I just wanted to make that point, but also ask that question, what are we doing right now to address inflow?
So I think primarily what we're doing is placing a lot of resources into our homelessness prevention program. And we'll talk about that in the next presentation. But we have really seen that we're helping only a small percentage of the people who need it. And so to take it to scale, we've had a lot of conversations with the county and with Destination Home on what it's going to take it to scale. So I think that in our next round of state funding, it could be a great use of that fund to possibly take that program to scale and help the people who need it, so that we can stop the inflow.
And are we looking at employment and displacement and like, there's a whole bunch of work that's coming out of your department over the next 2 months.
Right, so a couple things. We're in, as you alluded to, on our next community plan. We have there's 3 primary focuses in the next community plan, and one of them is addressing inflow and how are we better working with our safety net systems, social services, child welfare, even the criminal justice system, healthcare, so that in all of those safety net systems, housing is an outcome. And I think that's really what's going to be a game changer in terms of getting at this inflow problem. And then, as you mentioned, council member, the department is also working, I think, on a number of things that really create an ecosystem of keeping people in their homes. So, you know, council has made changes to our tenant protections. We're bringing forward later this year strategies and tools to address displacement. There's the whole CASA Compact, which is our regional effort to address things like protecting tenant rights, preservation of affordable housing, and producing more affordable housing. We call those the 3 Ps. So we're really, like I said, trying to work on that ecosystem that I think are all things that will help and get at the inflow issue.
Thank you.
Great. If there are no questions, do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? And that carries forward. All right, so we are on item 5.
So while Kelly's getting our presentation up, I'll just introduce the team here. Again, I'm Reagan with the Housing Department. This is Kelly, also with the Housing Department, who's our Homeless Response Manager. And then we're joined by Catherine Kaminsky from the county's Office of Supportive Housing. And also with us is Jessica Orozco, also with the County Office of Supportive Housing.
Wonderful, and we will lose quorum at 4:30, so no pressure. I apologize.
So speak fast.
Okay. All right, so I just want to give you a little context about how we got here. So last June, the Housing Department presented to the committee on the demand for affordable housing for families with children. And then previously before that, in June of 2018, the Housing Department came and provided an update on local responses, initiatives, and programming for homeless families. And so this is, so we're coming back again to talk about homelessness. There's a need to talk about it. So today we'll be talking about the definitions of homelessness and how the differing definitions of homelessness in our county, data on homeless families, the impacts of homeless families, the current programming that we have here in the county now, and what to look for opportunities in the future for enhancement. Okay, so how is homelessness defined? So the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, defines homelessness as an individual or family who lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Basically, they're outside or in a shelter. And McKinney-Vento, they accept this definition, but they also have a lot more. So they do consider doubled up, couch surfing, motels as homeless as well. So Santa Clara County's homeless service agencies use the HUD definition, and that is because our continuum of care receives over $25 million from HUD for homeless programming in our county. And we do not get to pick a definition. We have to use the HUD definition. Schools, however, use the McKinney-Vento definition to protect the educational rights of their students, their homeless students, and so that the students can remain in the schools. If they move, they can enroll in a new school, and without providing a lot of documents, they can get transportation to school, and they can get all the school services that they actually need. So what does the data tell us? I'm going to hand it over to Catherine so that she can talk data.
So we know that there's no real scientific way to capture all the homeless families and individuals in our community. So we look at it in a few different ways to try to best understand the need. The first thing is we have a homeless management information system that all of our partner agencies use countywide. In the last fiscal year, we had 602 families that are affiliated with San Jose that enrolled in homeless programs such as services, shelter, outreach, transitional housing. That's about 10% of the total 6,000 households from San Jose that enrolled in programs. Then we looked at, so we have victim service provider agencies across our county that are serving survivors of domestic violence. They don't use HMIS because of confidentiality, to protect confidentiality and safety of their clients. They use a separate system, and so we aren't able to understand a lot in terms of pulling that data, but we know that 353 homeless families with children were assessed for housing assistance at one of those victim service provider agencies in that same fiscal year. We also know that the point-in-time count, also known as the homeless census and survey, in this past, we conducted the most recent one in January, and there were 296 families in the county that represented 921 people in those families. 98 families were in San Jose, and that represented 313 individuals in those families. We know that that's an undercount, or likely an undercount, and that's why we look at all these other sources as well. And then, as Kelly mentioned, the McKinney-Vento definition is what the school districts use, and they identified 2,249 students as homeless or living in doubled up or couch surfing, or one of the other situations that Kelly described. And then just a little bit on the demographics of the folks that we saw in our homeless management information system. For homeless families specifically, about 70% in San Jose were Latinx, compared to about a third of our population. So we know they're overrepresented in our families, our homeless families. About half of the households had one adult, and about 14% had 3 adults or more, possibly representing multi-generational families. And then 71% of those families were female-headed households.
So what the data has taught us is that there are significant effects on children who experience both homelessness and housing instability. When unsheltered populations do not have their basic needs met, trauma may develop at a very early age. Without supportive intervention services, the effects of homelessness can persist throughout a person's life. Problems become compounded, needs increase over time, and barriers form in most parts of their lives as they get older. Overcrowded situations and housing insecurity leads to instability. People are forced to move more frequently. It can lead to lower education outcomes, higher levels of delinquency, and disruptions in social networks. How are homeless families currently being served here in our county? These are the 4 areas that I wanted to point out. And the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about prevention. But so prevention actually serves those who are at imminent risk, temporary shelter, provides the basic need of shelter, and then the rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing addresses the long-term housing. Of course, we want to prevent homelessness whenever possible, and if that's not possible, we want to ensure that the experience of homelessness is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. We had about 240 families enrolled in a shelter at some time during fiscal year 18-19. And for rapid rehousing, we had, I don't have the stats right here, but I do want to make a point that while we're still not meeting the needs of every single homeless family, we totally recognize that, we're beginning to see the gap close between the numbers of families with children entering our HMIS system for the first time and those being referred to programs. We're closing the gap because of the resources dedicated to families with children. For example, families with children represent 13% of the homeless population needing rapid rehousing assistance, but 24% of the rapid rehousing programs are set aside for families with children. Because of this, families with children are referred to housing programs more quickly than many other subpopulations. Again, we recognize that the systems in place are working, however, they're not scaled to meet the need, and so we need to increase the resources and expand the systems that are already in place. So I wanted to put a spotlight on the homelessness prevention program again. It has helped 841 households in the past 2 years, and we are projecting to double that in the next couple of years. So our target will be about 1,500 households in the next 2 years. It helps so many families. I have all these success stories that I want to tell you about, but I know we're crunched for time, so I'm not going to do that right now. But the 841 households, that is under our the actual system that works with Destination Home in the county. Though 26 households that Karen was referring to is actually a small prevention program that is paid for by our ESG funds. So they're separate. And then the 841 I wanted to mention, that is actually 2,544 individuals and over 1,300 children that were assisted. So.
Great, thank you so much, Kelly. And I think for upcoming meetings, Angel, if maybe what we could do is the items in the beginning have time limits, and let's switch this, because this is the second time this has happened, where we are rushing this issue, and that is, just completely unfair to the work that you're doing and the value that we have for this work, and I apologize. But we have to maintain quorum, so I'm gonna quickly look to my colleagues for questions and comments. Oh,
Do you want
but
a
before.
motion first? Why don't we?
Give me a motion.
So, second, whatever.
And I'd like to hear from the community, because they've been waiting. Phil, I saw that you were getting up. Please fill out a card afterwards, please. After. No worries. Thank you. And if there's anybody else, please.
I just wanted to make Phil Mastrocola, Winterfaith Collaborative. We, the Amicus de Guadalupe Center for Empowerment, the Center for Nonviolence, we have been working with the Office of Education for 2 years because we didn't feel like there was answers to the questions. Why are the families with children not being served by the city? Why are the people with disabilities not being served by the city? And why people, women with domestic violence, actually everybody with domestic violence, not being served by the city in the same amounts and the same intensity as the individual unduplicated adults. And we don't know. So we went to the Office of Education. They found, at least in the families with children, wherein there were some problems and issues, because these McKinney-Vento reps do engage and get into relationship with families. They have to. That's their job. And they get into relationship. They know their stories. You talk about stories. You wouldn't believe the stories until you go talk to these McKinney-Vento reps, and there's like 20 or 30 in the county. The kind of heart-wrenching and traumatic things that these children bring to their school and tell their teachers is amazing. And I really think that it's due time that we have them involved and bring them out here, both to the city and all the cities and the county. And I'm glad they're here. I'm glad we have the focus. Madam Chairman, I want to particularly thank you for the focus that you've had. You've done this for many years, this issue of families. That's what you've asked us to look at too. So I appreciate your time, appreciate the Housing Department's time, and Catherine's time here today. I appreciate all of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to look at my colleagues, council members. Foley.
Just a quick comment. I know we're at the end of the day, and I apologize that it feels like it's rushed, but that isn't because that we don't think this is an important issue. It's just that we've been here for 3 hours and we schedule things and we have to move on, unfortunately. But I'm very familiar with the McKinney-Vento program from my involvement at San Jose Unified, and it's too bad that we don't have a better count, or we cannot use the McKinney-Vento numbers instead and have to use the HUD numbers. Because I can tell you stories too of kids who attend various high schools in very wealthy high school districts who are homeless and they're couch surfing. And they are counted under McKinney-Vento, and Phil's right, they get tremendous services from the McKinney-Vento program. And the school districts do everything they can, and frankly, so do the local communities, the parent clubs who are aware, try to provide as many resources and housing themselves for them. So I think it's tragic that we do not have enough beds for victims of domestic violence and their children. When they need housing, we don't have enough housing for families who are homeless, and that is a travesty, and that is the number one place we should start putting our focus. We need to take care of our children. That's really, really critical. Thank you.
I'll be super quick. When I saw 602, I thought, this is doable, we can do this. And I just appreciate the work that has gone into this from the city and the county and all of the school district and our partners. Moving forward, I absolutely think that we can do this, and I echo that. In fact, growing up, my family took in other kids, that didn't have homes. So I grew up living with, it was just a home where we would bring in kids. And so, which is interesting that would have fallen under McKinney-Vento, but not under HUD. They technically weren't homeless, and they in fact were. So I'm appreciate this work. And thank our chairwoman for really keeping this as a priority moving forward, and look forward to doing some work on this in the future. Thank you.
So while I think in the HMIS there's only 602, there is in 2017 count for the McKinney-Vento, there is 2,249 students experience homelessness. So under McKinney-Vento, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the one thing that I do want to say, because there's so much I want to say about this, we're running out of time, but the one thing I do want to bring up is the overrepresentation that you brought up of Latinos in this particular population. And I'm going to create a connection also with, because I know that the research says when the women are homeless, they're more susceptible to certain crimes. And of course, if you're homeless, other people have access to your children. And so we are seeing an overrepresentation in the police department or in the sexual abuse crime statistics for young Latina girls. And I'm not, I don't have the exact data, but I'm going to safely say 90%. And so I think there is a nexus here. I think that there's some intersectionality here and we need to make sure that our efforts are focused, are concerted in the same way, so that, because these are the same families, right? These are the same folks who are either experiencing one issue or the other, and how are we supporting this family comprehensively, right? So I will ask for you to do that, and then ask for my colleagues to please the motion to include cross-listing to the full. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll amend the motion to cross-reference this to the full council, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Second.
Okay. What date?
Can I have a clarification question? So the purpose for the cross-reference would be tied to what? Is it more like informational, or would be presenting this data to the full council?
Yes, and I'm actually hearing this suggestion from Councilmember Esparza for us to connect it with the equity discussion.
To the equity discussion.
Well, maybe the study session.
The equity study session?
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, can we maybe take a little bit of time to kind of work through that offline and then come back with a good recommendation that would take that into consideration? I mean, if you don't mind, I think that'd be
Sure, yeah, I accept
Okay.
that. with you.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And then let's make sure that next time we have a different order and definitely a time limit for our folks. I love our library services, but I think this is the predicament that we found and this is the pattern.
Yeah, so noted, what we'll do is future agendas, we'll put housing up in front, because, yeah, this is the second time that this has happened, so we
Yes.
will definitely make that adjustment.
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the presentation, the information, for the service. And I apologize for being so rushed. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. And lastly, we have public comment, and so this person has been waiting this whole meeting to have
Yes,
public
I didn't
comment.
actually realize that my item had been approved 3 hours ago. So I'm the vice chair of the Neighborhoods Commission, and you may know that we handle code enforcement, transportation, public safety, and quality of life issues. And I want to thank you for approving our work plan today at 1:31. We're excited to be working on emergency response, access to planning information across our transportation platforms, VTA, Caltrain, and BART, blight in all of its forms, raising awareness in Spanish and English via our engagement platform we call the Road Show. I'm happy to say more about that at another time. Illegal fireworks in partnership with our city fire. And finally, we wish to thank Sabrina Parra-Garcia from the city manager's office. She's our executive analyst. She's just done a fantastic job leading us, guiding us, and we thank her for her professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, and I'd love for you to come back and give us an update on that traveling academy for the neighborhood services. That would be wonderful. Thank you.